Chapter 2096. This. Songda hesitated. What? You don't want to listen to me? Shu Hong's face turned cold. Then I'll leave right now. I don't want the Qingyun talisman or the invisibility talisman. I'd like to see if you can keep those two talismans. Can you keep your life? Fine. Songda gritted his teeth. I'll listen to you, Senior Shu. Please help me. A wise man submits to circumstances. According to Zhe Qing, sect leader Fu also wants to achieve something big. There's no need to be so calculative over such a small matter. Shu Hong smiled. Then, he looked at Fu Feng and asked, what about you? Do you want to make things difficult for me, or do you want to obediently swear an oath? We're willing to swear an oath. Fu Feng and Liu Yun looked at each other and smiled bitterly. What could they do? These were Foundation establishment cultivators. Even the Fu family master couldn't defeat them, therefore, they smiled apologetically and said, we won't come to White Bamboo Mountain again, and we won't look for Songda and the others, and we won't let them have any ideas about the Qingyun talisman and invisibility talisman of our heavenly talisman sect. Songda added. Good. Fu Feng nodded and swore an oath. Not bad. These little guys are sensible. Zhong Yejing nodded. Otherwise, I would be in a difficult position. Then, can we leave now? Fu Feng and Liu Yun looked at each other bitterly. In front of 4 Foundation establishment cultivators, they were indeed little guys. This trip to the Meng Kingdom was really fruitless. However, being able to see Fu Zhu and Fu Ao alive and well, and their cultivation improved greatly, wasn't it a gain for Fu Feng? Go. Shu Hong waved his hand. Go back directly. Don't make any other plans. Yes, we don't dare. Fu Feng and the others were overjoyed. They looked at Fu Zhu and the others and were about to fly away. At this time, a lazy voice sounded. What's wrong? You're leaving now? Why do I feel that it's inappropriate? Who is it? When Shu Hong saw that there were more cultivators approaching, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. When he looked up, he saw a young man and a young woman gradually appear on the foothills about 100 feet away from them. Weren't they Xiao Hua and Xue Xue? Xiao Hua. Yun Qinglian and Yun Qingfeng's faces revealed extremely shocked expressions. It was as if they'd seen a ghost. They practically didn't dare believe that Xiao Hua, who'd been killed by Yun Tengyu, would actually make an appearance here. Xiao Hua. An early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator? Fu Feng and Liu Yun naturally recognized Xiao Hua. Their expressions were complicated. Other than shock, there was also envy, jealousy, and uneasiness. When Xiao Hua escaped from Jinhua Mountain, Fu Feng was present. He didn't think that Xiao Hua could escape from the hands of 4 Foundation establishment cultivators. He didn't even think that Xiao Hua would appear in the distant Meng country with an early Foundation establishment cultivator. After all, Xiao Hua was only at the 5th or 6th level of qi refining. Xiao Hua. You actually. Song Guang found it even more inconceivable. As he made all sorts of guesses, the panic on his face turned into realization. Fu Zhu and Fu Ari covered their mouths in shock, their eyes wide open. Invisibility talisman? When Shu Hong saw Xiao Hua, who was also in the early stage of the Foundation building realm, and Xue Xue, who was at the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, he didn't pay them any mind. He glanced at Yun Qinglian, frowned, and sneered, fellow Daoist, which sect or family are you from? Why are you sneaking around here with invisibility talismans? You talk too much. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to this Xiao like this? Xiao Hua's face revealed a layer of killing intent. He waved his Daoist robe, and a fierce force came out of it. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth around Shu Hong was confined. Ah! Shu Hong was shocked. He felt as if he was completely surrounded by a layer of solid rock. He couldn't even move his limbs. Moreover, the true essence around his body was also confined. He couldn't use even a trace of magic power. He was very clear in his heart that Xiao Hua's magic power was higher than his by more than a level. Not only that, Xiao Hua's figure immediately flew to Shu Hong's side with an inconceivable speed in the blink of an eye. Raising his hand, Pa, He slapped Shu Hong's face twice. When the first slap landed, Shu Hong's body flashed with brilliance. It seemed that the defensive yellow talisman was broken by Xiao Hua's hand. You! Zhong Yejing was shocked. She clapped her hands and a strange magic tool appeared in her hands. If it was me, I would just quietly watch. I wouldn't invite trouble to myself. Xiao Hua didn't even look at her and said coldly. Then he raised his foot again. With a bang, he kicked Shu Hong to a corner of the foothill. Blood immediately flowed out from the corner of Shu Hong's mouth. But contrary to everyone's expectations, Shu Hong struggled to stand up. He bowed very respectfully. Junior was wrong. Please give me pointers, Senior Xiao. This Xiao isn't your senior. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over Shu Hong and said coldly, this Xiao doesn't want to see someone bullying the weak and forcefully snatching other people's things. Especially since this thing is what this Xiao owes others. Saying this, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out a few jade slips from his storage pouch. He threw them to Shu Hong and said, Shu Hong, these are the jade slips I gave you that day. I'll return them to you now. Take good care of them and properly teach the disciples. Properly support the heavenly talisman sect. Don't worry, if any news is leaked out and someone with a higher cultivation than this Xiao comes to find you, this Xiao will first exterminate the Shu family, Zhong family, and Misty Cloud sect. Yes, this junior understands. Shu Hong was overjoyed. He received the divine accumulation talisman and the jade slips and bowed in thanks. Yes, this junior understands. Shu Hong bitterly smiled and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He smiled apologetically and said, this junior will definitely keep this matter a secret. If anything happens to the heavenly talisman sect, please send a message to this Shu. If it is within my power, this Shu will definitely not refuse. Haha, in the future, this Fu will definitely pay a visit to Senior Shu. Shu Hong was very good at currying favor. Then Xiao Hua looked at Zhong Yejing. Zhong Yejing bitterly smiled and hurriedly said, this junior only wanted to exchange for a small piece of Qian Mo secret stone from fellow Daoist Shu. That's why I was invited to help. This junior swears that this junior will definitely not leak it. Xiao Hua's heart moved. He immediately nodded and no longer paid attention to Zhong Yejing. Senior. Xiao. Yun Qinglian and Yun Qingfeng's expressions were complicated. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and said coldly, this Xiao and your Misty Cloud sect can be considered as having a grudge. Originally, this Xiao wanted to wait until this matter was over before going to look for Yun Tengyu. However, I just heard that your sect leader has already passed away. This Xiao is a bit puzzled. That day, Yun Tengyu was full of vitality. Why did he suddenly pass away? Isn't this because of Senior? Yun Qingfeng's eyes narrowed. However, when he thought about how Xiao Hua was not at a disadvantage against the four of them, how could he have any thoughts of resistance? He then transmitted his voice and told Xiao Hua what he had done. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua nodded, the expression on his face softening slightly. After pondering for a moment, he said, since Sect Master Yun had an epiphany before his death and actually had the thought of repentance, and even urged his sect to do more good deeds, then this Xiao will let you all go. Many thanks for Senior's mercy. Yun Qinglian and Yun Qingfeng's anxious hearts finally relax. With their strength, they really didn't have any thoughts of resistance. It was inevitable that they still had doubts in their hearts, but, would they say it out loud? And you all? Xiao Hua turned to look at Fu Feng and Liu Yun. Senior Xiao, if there's anything, please instruct us. Fu Feng and Liu Yun were scared witless. Even Shu Hong, a Foundation Establishment senior, was sent flying by Xiao Hua's kick. When he stood up, he didn't even dare to be angry and humiliated. He even wanted to thank Xiao Hua for not killing him. How could they have the slightest intention to rebel? This Xiao was originally a bit embarrassed. Xiao Hua nodded. The matter between you all is an old grudge of the Fu clan. It's not about who is right and who is wrong. Everyone has their own reasons. However, since Elder Fu has already vowed not to cause any more trouble, this Xiao will have an easier time. However, Elder Fu, please go back and report to Fu Yunbua that this matter will end here. This Xiao will also not pursue the matters in Jinhua Mountain. Consider it a kind of exchange. Yes, this junior understands. This junior will pass on Senior Xiao's words to the clan leader. Fu Feng hurriedly bowed and said, "Good." Xiao Hua nodded. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, Fu Feng hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "This junior thanks Senior Xiao for his kindness. Since this matter has already reached a satisfactory conclusion under Senior Xiao's guidance, this Fu is untalented. Please come to my Heavenly Talisman sect's guest hall and let this junior play the role of a host." Hehe, there's no hurry. Xiao Hua waved his hand and looked at another mountain. He smiled and said, "Fellow Taoists, isn't it too late to leave now?" "Ah, there's someone else." Xu Hong, Yun Qinglian, and the others were even more shocked. Fu Feng's eyes flashed with understanding. She looked at Xiao Hua and then at the place Xiao Hua was pointing at. "Ha ha ha, fellow Daoist Xiao is really amazing." A very abnormal voice sounded. Then, just like Xiao Hua, two cultivators slowly appeared in a certain place. They were completely enthralled. The cultivator in front cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, we're just passing by. We definitely have no other intentions. We'll leave immediately and won't delay fellow Daoist's matter." "Fellow Daoist, are you just passing by?" Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at that cultivator with confidence. He said coldly, "Fellow Daoist, if you don't take down the Mi Lu and make a heart oath, how can I let you go?" "Fellow Daoist Xiao, don't push us too far." That cultivator also said angrily, "Don't think that just because you have a bit of cultivation, you can be arrogant. If this old man takes down the Mi Lu, do you still want to live?" "Ha ha ha." Xiao Hua clapped his hands. The soaring dragon shears flashed with a golden light and flew into the air. Like lightning, it slashed towards the cultivator. "This Xiao wants to see who will be able to kill who." That cultivator clapped his hands and took out a fan-like magic treasure. Under the urging of his magic power, a hurricane was born from the fan-like magic treasure. As the cultivator waved his hand, that hurricane actually turned into dozens of sword-like wind blades and stabbed towards Xiao Hua. Hey! Xiao Hua felt the sharp fluctuation of spiritual power on the wind blades and the astonishing magic power contained in the wind blades. He couldn't help but be a bit stunned. He thought, Foundation Establishment late-stage cultivation? Could it be that this young master guessed correctly? This guy really isn't Qiu Mingwei? If it's not him, then who is it? However, if a mere Foundation Establishment late-stage cultivator wants to escape from this young master's hands, that's simply a dream. Xiao Hua sneered. He pointed his hand and the soaring dragon shears flashed with a golden light. Like cutting silk, it easily cut the numerous wind blades in half. The golden light didn't even lose its momentum and slashed towards the fan-like magic treasure. -8. Chapter 2097. Ayo, such a tyrannical magic treasure, such a strong magic power. That cultivator clearly understood Xu Hong's situation and knew that he had underestimated Xiao Hua. He was slightly surprised, but he still did not panic. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of life essence, sprinkling it on the palm leaf fan. The palm leaf fan shone brilliantly, and with a shua sound, the brilliance collided with the soaring dragon scissors. The cultivator sucked in a breath of cold air, and with a wave of his hand, the palm leaf fan fell into his hand. However, there was already a faint crack on the palm leaf fan. It was actually a mark left by the soaring dragon scissors. Rise. Xiao Hua simply didn't give the Mi Yarrow cultivators a chance to breathe. His hands continuously rubbed, and two Samadhi True Fire walls appeared from his hands. In the blink of an eye, the two Mi Yarrow cultivators were surrounded. Ah! Samadhi True Fire. The cultivator was stunned. His voice was concealed by the palm leaf fan, but it still revealed his panic. "Fellow Daoist, do you really want me to kill you?" Xiao Hua's tone was cold, and it seemed to penetrate the cultivator's heart. Along with this voice, Xiao Hua once again clapped his hands, and a rumbling sound like millions of bees was heard. It was also like a huge hill slowly rising. Xiao Hua actually took out the second magic treasure, the cloud suppressing seal. Above the cloud suppressing seal, a bronze brilliance bloomed, and the surrounding spiritual energy quickly condensed, faintly forming a veil. Ah! Xu Hong and the others were once again shocked in their hearts. Xiao Hua really opened their eyes again and again. As long as it was a cultivator, even if it was a Jindan stage senior, being able to use one magic treasure and one magic tool at a time was already rare and commendable. Xiao Hua actually took out 2 magic tools at once. It seemed that each magic treasure was more powerful than the previous one. Is this still the poor rogue cultivator from that year? Not only did the people who knew Xiao Hua the earliest have such thoughts, but even Fu Feng, Liu Yun, and the others also had such thought. In just a few decades, Xiao Hua was actually so powerful, so fierce. On the other hand, they themselves did not seem to have changed. In an instant, Fu Feng recalled in her heart. Fortunately, she didn't seem to have done anything to offend Xiao Hua. Looking at the Mihu cultivator again, seeing Xiao Hua use the cloud suppressing seal, the face of the Mihu cultivator was a little pale, but at the same time, a kind of arrogance was aroused in his eyes. The cultivator stretched out his hand and patted on his own head. Woo! The roar of a beast was like an earthquake, and a faint shadow of a black bear about 5 feet tall flashed out from his back. It was actually the black bear Dharma body. As soon as the black bear Dharma body appeared, a fierce aura was released, as if the pressure of a Foundation Establishment late-stage cultivator directly rushed towards Xiao Hua. Fellow Daoist, if you want to die, release this avatar. Xiao Hua did not panic at all. He also did not release his pressure. Before the aura of the black bear celestial body could suppress him, a cold light flashed in his eyes. He seemed to be mumbling something. Ah! The Mihu cultivator suddenly clutched his head and curled up as if someone had struck him hard in the head. He quickly withdrew the avatar he had just released, and his fierce aura was withdrawn as well. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please spare my life. I will get rid of this Mihu. The Mihu cultivator's voice was hoarse. He hurriedly waved his hand and begged for mercy, removing the Mihu from his body. Ah! It's actually Qiu Mingwei? Xiao Hua widened his eyes and looked at this fat cultivator. Qiu Mingwei's black and fat body was definitely comparable to Xu Hong's. Xiao Hua was more curious about the other Mihu cultivator. However, when Liao Shenlan took the Mihu cultivator, Xiao Hua's eyes fell even more. It really is the Foundation Establishment early stage Liao Shenlan. This is somewhat inconceivable. Xiao Hua almost murmured, how did Liao Shenlan reach Foundation Establishment? Her previous cultivation. Qiu Mingwei, Liao Shenlan, Yun De, Fu Feng, and the others almost moaned as if this was not White Bamboo Mountain, but Golden Mount Hua. Several people of the Fu clan's grievances were actually gathered in the distant Meng country. Junior, greets Senior Xiao. Liao Xuanlan's face was somewhat pale and somewhat unwilling. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and bowed. Ian, Xiao Hua flicked his sleeve, you and I are old acquaintances, don't be too polite. Greetings fellow Daoist Xiao. Qiu Mingwei put away all the magic treasures, and Xiao Hua also put away the Samadhi True Fire. He stepped forward and greeted, I really didn't expect that an unknown Qi refinement disciple from back then would have a cultivation far surpassing me. Yes, Golden Mount Hua's Xiao Hua was simply an ant in Qiu Mingwei's eyes. He even joined hands with Fu Yunbo to help the 3 cultivation sects surround Xiao Hua, but now? Xiao Hua killed him without any effort at all. Especially Xiao Hua's soul stab at the end, without anyone noticing, it suddenly poked his weak spot. He no longer dared to have any thoughts of resistance in his heart. He believed that if he really released his Dharma body, Xiao Hua would definitely use an unimaginable method to kill him. You're just a little cultivator who was chased by others until you pissed your pant. Xiao Hua said coldly. Hihi, that day I felt that the 3 cultivation sects were too much of a bully, actually sending 4 Foundation Establishment cultivators. Qiu Mingwei smiled apologetically, however, since fellow Daoist Xiao is so talented, even if they send 10 more, I'm afraid it still won't work. Although Qiu Mingwei had some flattery in his words, he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He really couldn't believe that Xiao Hua actually had a cultivation comparable to a golden core cultivator in just a few decades. How could he endure this? especially when he used a special method to forcibly enter the late stage of Foundation establishment. So it's Senior Liao who came. Songda didn't miss the opportunity to bow and say, presumably Senior Liao still has some misunderstandings towards me. Since Senior Xiao is here, this junior will clearly explain the cause of this matter. Let Senior Xiao uphold justice for us. Uphold justice for what? Liao Xuanlan's heart was bitter as she thought to herself. Xiao Hua said it clearly just now that he supports the Heavenly Talisman sect. With the support of this golden core cultivator, how many cultivators on the Dawn Rain continent will disturb the Heavenly Talisman sect? Without waiting for Liao Shenlan to speak, Songda raised his hand and said, "This isn't the place to talk. This junior invites seniors to sit in the guest hall. Senior Xiao Tilda, we won't stay any longer. Senior already knows why we came. Moreover, there's still a drought around Yu City. It's better for us to go back and help." Yun Qinglai and Yun Qingfeng bowed and said. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and nodded, "That's good. This Xiao will remember what you did. If anything happens to the Misty Cloud sect, this Xiao will definitely help." Yun Qinglai and Yun Qingfeng were overjoyed and bowed to express their thanks. "Oh right, there's also some good seeds that this Xiao collected. Take them. If you see a place where the rice can't germinate, give these good seeds to them to cultivate. Remember." Xiao Hua took out a small storage pouch from his bosom and handed it over. -8. Chapter 2098. Yes, this junior understands. Senior Xiao's compassion truly makes this junior admire you. Yun Qingfeng took the storage pouch and left. As for how they would report to Misty Cloud sect master when they return, that was not Xiao Hua's concern. Junior and the others will not stay any longer. Xu Hong and Zhong Yejing also bowed and said. Unexpectedly, Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, "Fellow Daoist Xu, please wait a moment. I heard from fellow Daoist Zhong that you have a small piece of Qianmo secret stone." Xu Hong nodded and clapped his hand, taking out a fingernail-sized Qianmo secret stone and handed it over. He smiled apologetically and said, "This junior only has this small piece. If senior needs it, please take it." Zhong Yejing at the side was speechless. She was careful, said endless good words, and even accompanied Xu Hong to help out, just to exchange this Qianmo secret stone with him. But Xiao Hua's one sentence and Xu Hong immediately gave it to him. This made her feel very uncomfortable. Xiao Hua took it and clapped his hand again, taking out many spirit stones and handing them to Xu Hong. He smiled and said, "How can I take fellow Daoists' things for free? Are these spirit stones enough?" Xu Hong's divine sense swept over, his face already showing joy. Nowadays, spirit stones in Dawn Rain continent were gradually becoming scarce. Xiao Hua's spirit stones were more than enough. Xu Hong took the spirit stones, cupped his hands and flew up. At this time, Xiao Hua spoke again, "Fellow Daoist Zhong, please wait a moment. This Xiao has something to ask. Senior Xiao, please speak." Zhong Yejing was a bit surprised. She definitely had nothing to do with today's matter. She really could not think of what Xiao Hua wanted to ask her. But after Xiao Hua transmitted a few words, Zhong Yejing's face showed a serious expression, then a burst of ecstasy, nodding vigorously. Since that's the case, fellow Daoist Zhong, please stay. This Xiao will discuss this matter with fellow Daoist Zhong later. Xiao Hua said without any doubt. Yes, Junior understands. Zhong Yejing smiled and said to Xu Hong, "Fellow Daoist Xu, please go first." Okay, Xu Hong nodded, not daring to ask anything, and flew away. "Let's go, we will go to the guest hall to see the recent situation of Heavenly Talisman Sec." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Please lead the way." "Yes, Senior Xiao, Senior Qiu, this way please." His face was full of joy. The grudges between Qiu Mingwei and the Fu family of Jinhua had come to an end today. With the support of his old friend Xiao Hua, it was impossible for his Heavenly Talisman school not to prosper. The Heavenly Talisman sect's guest hall was actually very simple and crude. It was a hall that was made after the cave was tidied up. However, Xiao Hua didn't mind at all. He looked around with interest, then smiled again. "Sect Master Fu, your welcoming hall isn't small, but there aren't enough chairs inside. You're not qualified to be a sect master. Hehe, Senior Xiao is right. With a big smile on his face, Song Ying called out to Fu Zhu and Fu Puppet to prepare tea and other things. He said, Junior Heavenly Talisman Sect is just a cover. Junior Heavenly Talisman Sect is only a small success in Qi refining. Everyone else is at the 11th layer of Qi refining. The only disciples we have are either children or low-level cultivators with poor aptitude. This junior had never thought that so many seniors would return at once. Today's grand occasion is something that this junior has dreamt of even in his dreams. This junior has prepared for 50 years before it can appear. Senior Xiao's arrival has made this junior's dream come true. This junior is truly grateful. En. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, You don't need to trouble yourself. We'll just sit on the floor. It's no trouble, no trouble. Song Ying said anxiously. Fu Feng looked at Liu Yun and also said anxiously, There's no need, Senior Xiao. We'll send the Fu clan's disciples out to have a good chat with the Heavenly Talisman Sect's disciples. We'll just talk. En, this junior will also go out. Liu Yun smiled and waved her hand. Fu Shan and the other disciples followed her out of the welcoming hall. Senior Xiao, please take a seat. Song Ying arranged the seats and respectfully invited Xiao Hua to take a seat. Xiao Hua looked around. Song Ying actually only placed one jade chair in the center. The other chairs were placed on both sides of the chair. The flattery in his eyes was self-evident. Xiao Hua nodded and said to Qiu Mingwei with a smile, It would be impolite of me to refuse. Of course. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please. Qiu Mingwei's face was a bit embarrassed. He was at the late stage of foundation establishment, and his cultivation was the highest among them. Xiao Hua was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. However, Qiu Mingwei still understood that Xiao Hua's appearance was somewhat discounted. Xiao Hua took a seat first. Qiu Mingwei, Liao Shenlan, Zhong Yejing, and Fu Feng took the guest seats. Song Ying, Fu Zhu, and Fu Ari sat on the left side of the main seat. Xue was very curious and kept staring at Fu Zhu and Fu Ari. Xiao Hua drank a mouthful of spirit tea and said with a smile, I'm quite familiar with the grudges between the two generations of the Fu clan. I was also involved in it a few decades ago. Elder Fu has already made a heart oath and explained it on behalf of Fu Yunbua. I won't say anything more. I only want to say one thing. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. Senior Xiao, please enlighten us. Song Ying and Fu Feng hurriedly stood up and bowed. Both sides are from the Fu clan. No matter if it's Shi or Meng, the bloodline is the same, Xiao Hua said after pondering for a while. If both sides fight, both sides will suffer. Actually, it's not that you haven't thought about it, but because of the hatred in your heart, you feel that the other side won't forgive you. That's why you're in a stalemate. Just now, this Xiao clearly saw that Elder Fu is very fond of Fu Zhu and Fu Ma. In the future, the direct disciples of Talisman Gate will also be the children of these two people. Elder Fu may not necessarily not cherish them. Therefore, this Xiao hopes that your two families will take a few steps back and consider this matter carefully. Song Ying glanced at Fu Feng and didn't say anything. After all, he was the weaker side. Junior will definitely pass on your words to the clan head. Fu Feng said with a smile, Junior is only an elder after all. I can't promise Senior anything. This is just a small thought of mine. Xiao Hua waved his hand. Then, he looked at Liao Shenlan and said, Fellow Daoist Liao, I'm also clear about your grudges. It seems to be in the Fu clan of Jinhua Mountain, right? Yes. Liao Shenlan bit her lips and replied like a mosquito. Hehe, I don't dare to talk about who is right and who is wrong. I'm sure fellow Daoist Chiu won't not talk about it with you. Xiao Hua nodded and said, I just think that since you want to take revenge, you should clearly distinguish between gratitude and grudges. Don't drag unrelated people into this. Moreover, I won't hide it from you fellow Taoists. What I hate the most is using grudges as a cover to do things that harm others for their own benefit. It's against reason and nature. Liao Xuanlan's face flushed red. She lowered her head deeply and didn't dare to say a word. Fellow Daoist Liao, You and I can be considered old friends. On Jinhua Mountain, we also look after each other. I won't say anything more today, and I don't want to pursue this matter anymore. Fellow Daoist is also a foundation establishment cultivator. The road to heaven is in front of fellow Daoist. I hope fellow Daoist Liao can take care of yourself. Xiao Hua said with a gloomy and cold tone. Yes, Junior understands. For some reason, Liao Xuanlan's face turned pale. She murmured, even if Junior wants to improve her cultivation in the future, it will be extremely difficult. That's why Junior has evil thoughts. I want to obtain Fu Clan Head's yellow talisman technique. Oh! Xiao Hua stared blankly. He glanced at Liao Shenlan and then looked at Qiu Mingwei. Cough cough tilde Qiu Mingwei's face showed a trace of embarrassment. He knew Xiao Hua was going to ask, so he didn't hide it and told him the reason. It turned out that Qiu Mingwei had obtained a secret technique in his early years. It was the widely rumored human cauldron furnace technique of plucking yin to replenish yang. This human cauldron furnace technique was the same as dual cultivation. They both relied on the balance of yin and yang to achieve a breakthrough in cultivation. However, dual cultivation was based on the balance of yin and yang. It was beneficial for both men and women. However, the human cauldron furnace technique was different. The male cultivator was the main cultivator and the female cultivator was the auxiliary cultivator. The female cultivator could certainly benefit, but there were more injuries. Liao Xianlan was in such a situation. That day, Qiu Mingwei met Liao Xianlan and saw that her constitution was different. It was actually compatible with his human cauldron furnace technique. He wanted to make Liao Xianlan his human cauldron. However, the human cauldron furnace technique was also voluntary. Therefore, Liao Xianlan set revenge as her condition. Of course, Qiu Mingwei would not blindly compromise. He only agreed to help her once. After all, he had to deal with a cultivator family. But that day, Liao Xuanlan's revenge was blocked by Xiao Hua. Qiu Mingwei saw that Jinhua Mountain was involved in the grievances of the three sects, so he did not dare to force Fu Yunbo too much. He only brought Liao Shenlan out from Jinhua Mountain. When Qiu Mingwei failed to break through to foundation establishment late stage, he had no choice but to copulate with Liao Shenlan. Using Liao Shenlan as his human cauldron, he forcibly broke through to foundation establishment late stage. Liao Shenlan also benefited from this and directly entered foundation establishment early stage. However, the consequence of this kind of forcible advancement was that Liao Xuanlan's cultivation could only remain at foundation establishment early stage for the rest of her life. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He secretly said, no wonder Liao Shenlan suddenly entered foundation establishment. This young master used this to guess these two people. It was impossible to guess correctly. Hehe, fellow Xiao, this is my secret technique. I ask fellow Xiao to accept it. Consider it a small token of my appreciation, Qiu Mingwei said. He stretched out his hand and took out a jade slip and handed it to Xiao Hua. Ah! Xiao Hua stared blankly. He didn't have such thoughts. Knowing that Qiu Mingwei had misunderstood, he unconsciously turned his head to look at Xue Xue. Xue Xue was currently looking down and didn't even look at him. Hehe, many thanks, fellow Daoist Qiu. Xiao Hua's eyes turned slightly, and he reached out to receive it. Qiu Mingwei was delighted in his heart when he saw Xiao Hua receive the jade slip, and he stood up and said, since the enmity between my wife and sect master Fu has been exposed, then I won't stay here any longer. Farewell. All right then. Xiao Hua stood up and returned the greeting. He casually said, actually, there's no harm in trying out Gung Mountain's Liao clan's pill refining technique. Even head Fu was able to establish the Heavenly Talisman sect. Since fellow Daoist Liao has fellow Daoist Qiu's support, what's there to fear? Liao Xuanlan's face lit up with joy. She bowed towards Xiao Hua and said, Senior Xiao's shout was like being enlightened. This junior was blindly thinking of inheriting Gung Mountain's Liao family's talisman crafting technique, and neglected my husband's help. In the future, this junior will try to refine pills. If I succeed, I still have to thank Senior for his kindness today. -8. Chapter 2099. Haha, no problem, no problem. Xiao Hua laughed casually. He was just interested in the Liao family's alchemy technique, but he didn't know if it was complete or not. After Qiu Mingwei and Liao Xianlan left, only Zhong Yejing, an outsider, was left. The others were familiar with each other in Jinhua Mountain. Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Zhong, please wait outside for a while. I have something to discuss with Master Fu and the others. I will go with you to the Zhong family immediately." "Yes, I understand." Zhong Yejing replied with a smile before walking out of the room. Seeing that there were no outsiders in the guest hall, Xiao Hua asked his last doubt, "Master Fu, I still have some doubts. Do I have to ask?" "Senior Xiao, what sect Master Fu?" "You can just call me Fu." Tsongda smiled and said, "My Heavenly Talisman sect's talisman technique and cultivation method are all from Senior Xiao. Why are you so polite?" Haha. Xiao Hua shook his head, "Those are all Master Fu's own. They have nothing to do with me. I have some doubts. Didn't Fu Yunbo say that Master Fu, Fu Zhu, and Fu Hu?" "Oh, so that's it." With a sudden realization, he looked at his two twin wives with a very sweet look in his eyes. He then transmitted a few words to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua's face showed a look of realization. He nodded and said with a smile, "Since you're not directly related by blood, that's the best. This Xiao's wives have been thinking about this all the way, and have often sighed for you. So the confused cultivator in the Black Forest is Senior Xiao?" Fu Feng had been suspicious and asked hurriedly. "Haha, yes." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "I met Tsongda in Shi country and heard that he came to Meng country. Since Elder Fu also came, I naturally came too. I know how bad it is to owe someone something. That's because Senior Xiao has a noble character. If it was someone else, he would have taken it himself." Tsongda smiled apologetically. "Well, Elder Fu, since the grudge has been revealed, the disciples of Jinhua Mountain will stay in White Bamboo Mountain for a few more days." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Now, I have a few words to say to Master Fu." "Yes, I'll go out now." Fu Feng said with a smile, "I also hope that the Fu clan can flourish and prosper." After everyone had left, Xiao Hua's expression turned serious as he said, "That's right. Listen carefully. The reason why I supported you earlier was to help you eliminate the enemies in front of you. It can be considered as giving your Heavenly Talisman sect a buffer. This Xiao has never thought of blocking your Heavenly Talisman sect." Although Tsong Cheng was depressed in his heart, he didn't show it on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "Junior understands Senior's painstaking efforts. For Senior to take care of Junior like this, Junior is already endlessly grateful. Yes, after all, you and I are fated to meet." Xiao Hua nodded. Sect Master Fu has used this Xiao's name to fend off strong enemies in the beginning. However, if Sect Master Fu does anything shameless, this Xiao will definitely not show mercy. "Thank you, Senior." An overjoyed expression appeared on Tsongda's face as he said, "Actually, if Senior Xiao is willing, this Junior's Heavenly Talisman sect can let Senior become the sect master." "Ha ha ha, there's no need." Xiao Hua flicked his sleeves. Why would he care about a small sect like this? Then, he waved his hand and took out a storage pouch. He handed it to Tsongda and said, "This Xiao didn't know that Sect Master Fu had established a sect, so I don't have any gifts. Just take this as a token of my sincerity." "Hihi, there's no need, there's no need." Tsongda politely declined, but he still took the pouch. However, when he opened the storage pouch, he couldn't help but be stunned. He muttered, "Foundation establishment pills, spirit stones, spirit herbs, and some rice?" Tsongda raised his head. His eyes were filled with sincerity as he said, "Senior Xiao, this Junior won't speak empty word. These things are too precious to Junior and the Heavenly Talisman sect. Moreover, they are too important. This Junior didn't expect Senior to give Junior so many things. This Junior really can't express the excitement in my heart right now. Forget it. Since you don't speak empty words, this Xiao won't speak any empty words either." Xiao Hua patted Tsongda's shoulder and said, "You and I are old acquaintances. In the past, You also took care of this Xiao. Since this Xiao can help you, why wouldn't I? This Xiao also knows that you have great talent and great ambitions. You want to achieve great things on Xiaoyu continent. Today, I've said many times that everything you do must be worthy of your conscience. Yes, this junior will definitely remember. Songda said, this junior will personally take the seeds in this storage pouch with my wife. This junior will definitely complete senior's task properly. Good. This Xiao will take his leave now. Xiao Hua stared at Songda. He didn't know what to think. I hope you can keep your words. Senior, you're leaving now? Songda said anxiously. You won't stay for a few more days. This junior still wants to listen to senior's teachings. Xiao Hua understood Songda's thoughts. He muttered to himself for a moment and said, Songda, it's not that this Xiao doesn't want to help you build your foundation. You also saw that my wife is also at the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining. She also hasn't built her foundation. However, building one's foundation is a fated chance. Everyone is different, so there's nothing special to learn from, and this Xiao's foundation building is also different from others, so there's nothing I can teach you. Songda's face was filled with disappointment, but he still had a smile on his face. This junior is already happy that senior Xiao can think of this. As he said this, Songda clapped his hands and took out a worn-out silk cloth. He handed it over to Xiao Hua and said, Senior Xiao has done so much for this junior really has nothing to repay. This junior also guessed that although senior's cultivation base is already at the core formation realm, this junior and the others can still sense that senior's cultivation base is at the foundation establishment realm. I'm afraid this is the reason for this junior's so-called crossing the sea of deception cultivation technique. This is a record of the cultivation technique. It belongs to the senior who raised this junior. Uncle Xiong. This is the senior's legacy. This junior treasures this item very much. However, if this junior doesn't give this item to senior, this junior will feel apologetic. Oh, is that so? Xiao Hua knew that there were some flaws in this crossing the sea of deception, so he already had the idea to make up for it. After receiving the item, he carefully looked at it and nodded. I know your intentions. I'll just make a copy of this cultivation technique. I'll leave this item to you. If it's the complete cultivation technique, Senior Xiao can just make a copy. This junior will definitely keep this item. Songda waved his hand and said, but this silk cloth is damaged. If there's something wrong with the copy, I'm afraid it'll be detrimental to Senior's cultivation. Senior should just keep it. Hearing this, Xiao Hua looked at Songda's sincere expression and made a decision in his heart. He nodded and said, since it's like this Xiao will accept it. Then, Xiao Hua put away the silk cloth and walked out of the guest hall. He saw Xue Xue whispering to Fu Zhu and Fu Puppet. They seemed to be very close. Xue Xue heard Xiao Hua coming out and hurriedly went over to greet him. Let's go. Xiao Hua said with a smile. Everything has been explained. The Heavenly Talisman sect and Jinhua Mountains Fu clan can be considered to have a good start. In the future, everything will be under Fu clan's control. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chijian.com to vote for it. -8. Chapter 2100. Yunde and Fu Feng tried their best to urge him to stay, but Xiao Hua only smiled and didn't stop. Now that he had the status of a senior, everyone was respectful in front of him. He was far from being free and unfettered when he was with Xue Xue, so Xiao Hua didn't want to stay here any longer. Zhong Yejing naturally cupped her hands and bid farewell to Yunde and the others. To be honest, she wasn't interested in the Heavenly Talisman sect at all. This kind of cultivation sect that couldn't even be compared to an ordinary cultivation family, or a small sect that was created to satisfy the selfish desires of a sect master, there were many of them in Meng country. She didn't dare to say that she had seen 100 of them, but there were at least dozens of them. These sects were like morning dew, but they would disappear under the sun. Zhong Yejing didn't understand why Xiao Hua said those words for the sake of the Heavenly Talisman sect's survival. After all, on the Dawn Rain continent, cultivators were as numerous as the hairs on an ox, and the karma between them was even more chaotic. Xiao Hua would pay too much for what he said today. However, after waiting for more than half a day, under Zhong Yejing's lead, the three of them didn't fly too far. However, Xiao Hua's actions made Zhong Yejing realize something. Xiao Hua didn't fly by himself, but released his divine sense. Every time he flew for a while, he would stop and let Zhong Yejing and Shui wait while he flew away. Sometimes he was far away, and Zhong Yejing's divine sense couldn't reach him. Sometimes he was close, and Zhong Yejing could see clearly with her divine sense. Xiao Hua sat there and actually did what he instructed Yunda to do, and gave some good seeds to the villagers who were farming. Is this still a cultivator? Zhong Yejing was enlightened, but she still couldn't understand. Since she was young, she knew that she was a cultivation disciple and had never heard of secular people. When she met these secular people during her travels, she was also instilled with the concept of ants by her clansmen. Therefore, not only did she not know that secular people had to rely on farming to make a living, she also didn't know that secular people needed to rely on mulberry and cotton to keep warm. There was no need to even mention the fact that the rice was extinct and the fine variety was extinct. Senior Xiao, this method of yours, can it increase cultivation? Zhong Yejing seemed to have caught on to something. She waited until Xiao Hua came back in a hurry and asked, could it be that you have such a high cultivation, but you relied on this to benefit from it? Ha ha ha! Xiao Hua laughed heartily. He glanced at Shui and said, if this can increase one's cultivation, then why would cultivators go back to cultivate? Do these secular people still need to farm? Then, why is Senior doing such a useless thing? Zhong Yejing finally voiced out her doubts. The first thing that the head of the Zhong family told us after we became sensible was to improve our cultivation by any means necessary. As long as you have a superhuman cultivation, all your means will be legitimate. Xiao Hua actually didn't want to explain too much to her. There were some things that if other people understood, they would understand even if you didn't say a word. But if there were some things that other people didn't understand, they wouldn't understand even if you were eloquent. After thinking for a moment, Xiao Hua stretched out his right hand and patted his chest. He said with a smile, nothing else but my conscience. Conscience. Zhong Yejing was even more puzzled. She secretly said, conscience, this thing, how many spirit stones is it worth? Senior's wisdom really benefits this junior. Zhong Yejing didn't refute Xiao Hua. She smiled apologetically and said, just now Senior said that you know Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoran from my Zhong family. What's going on? This junior hasn't seen them for a long time. Xiao Hua was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he asked, the 2 gold leaves that fellow Zhong mentioned, are they still in the Zhong family? They should be. Zhong Yejing nodded and said, this thing was taken out by Junior's third uncle, Zhong Peiyuan, several times. First, he wanted to find out where this thing came from. Second, he wanted to use this thing to exchange for the Qianmo secret stone, but he failed several times. So, third uncle threw this thing in the ancestral hall and never took it again. If this junior remembers correctly, no one took it away. Very good. Xiao Hua nodded. This Xiao met your third uncle at the auction in Weeping Moon City. However, this Xiao didn't know that fellow Daoist was Zhong Peiyuan. I didn't even know that he was a disciple of Meng country's Zhong family. And Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoran were also met by this Xiao when this Xiao went to the netherworld to gain experience. If fellow Zhong didn't mention the Qianmo secret stone just now, this Xiao wouldn't have thought about asking fellow Daoist about the gold leaf. And this Xiao didn't expect that the gold leaf that this Xiao had been looking for a long time was actually in Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoran's home. Yeah, the matters of the world change unpredictably. How could it be something that we cultivators can rashly guess? Zhong Yejing sighed and said, I didn't expect that I would meet Senior Xiao when I just wanted to exchange for a small piece of Qianmo's secret stone from Shu Hong. Not only do you have the Qianmo's secret stone, but you also have several other materials for refining weapons. Senior Xiao even knows how to refine weapons. Fellow Daoist Zhong, how long will it take from here to Yuncheng? Xiao Hua looked into the distance and smiled. Not too close, about 10 days of travel. Zhong Yejing said carefully. Okay, I don't need to be too anxious. Xiao Hua said, but without waiting for him to finish, he immediately smiled and said, Hehe, wait a moment, this Xiao will go again. Xue Xue's eyes were filled with love, and she looked at Xiao Hua hurriedly flying away with satisfaction. Zhong Yejing stood at the side, and her eyes were full of helplessness. Just like this, the three of them didn't fly fast. On the evening of the third day, Xue Xue and Xiao Hua were quietly cultivating. Xiao Hua said in a low voice, Wife, this husband has some matters to attend to, and will be back at dawn. Husband, please go, this concubine will cultivate by herself. Xue Xue didn't ask what Xiao Hua had to do, and smiled very virtuously. Okay. Xiao Hua laid down the rabbit formation, then used the earth escape technique to leave. Before the sun had even risen, he quietly returned and once again took out the concealment technique that was given to him, carefully studying and comprehending it. Xue Xue didn't find it strange, but the Heavenly Talisman sect of White Bamboo Mountain was in chaos. Originally, after Xiao Hua and the others left, Tsong, Fu Feng and the others became more and more harmonious. Fu Feng even taught Tsong how to make talismans, and Liu Yun also taught Fu Zhu and Fu Ba how to cultivate. It seemed that the disciples of Golden Mount Hua were going to stay in the Heavenly Talisman sect for a while. However, on the night of the third day after Xiao Hua left, a short foundation establishment middle stage cultivator suddenly broke into White Bamboo Mountain. Not only did he want to take Tsong's life, he also wanted to capture Fu Zhu and Fu Ba as concubines. Naturally, Tsong, Fu Feng and Liu Yun resisted with all their strength, and planned to perish together. That short cultivator's methods were very powerful, and with just a few ordinary techniques, the three of them were forced to a dead end. Just when the three of them were in despair, that cultivator gave up on the technique, and took out a strange, pitch-black stick, wanting to beat the three of them to death. Strangely, when the three of them disregarded life and death and prepared to make a final resistance, the three of them discovered that their true qi, which had not changed for several years, or even several decades, suddenly showed signs of condensing, and the three of them simultaneously showed signs of building their foundation. The mood of the three of them could be imagined, both happy and sad, and half happy and half sad. What was even more strange was that at this time, that cultivator seemed to have realized something, and said, Damn it, I made a mistake. Immediately after, he threw down a few spiritual herbs and flew away. For the three of them, this was a great joy. The three of them did not have time to figure out that person's purpose, and each of them left White Bamboo Mountain to find a place to build their foundation, and quietly build their foundation. Not to mention the pleasant surprise of the others, Xiao Hua's journey, which was supposed to take 10 days, took a full 15 days because of his delay. On this day, he saw a large city in front of him. There was a bustling crowd, towering city walls, and guards in bright armor. Xiao Hua knew that this was Yun City. Sure enough, Zhong Yejing said with a smile, Senior Xiao, this is Cloud City, the foundation of my Zhong family. More than half of the industries in this city belong to my Zhong family. More than half of the people in this city belong to my Zhong family. Oh, are they all surnamed Zhong? Xiao Hua asked curiously. I've been to Yu City before, but I didn't know much about it. Senior, please understand that I said belong to, not are. Zhong Yejing smiled apologetically. Most of the people in Cloud City are secular people, tenants, workers, or other identities of the big families surnamed Zhong in the city. These big families surnamed Zhong are the disciples of my Zhong family who have shallow aptitudes and can't cultivate, and they manage these secular industries. There are no cultivation families in Yu City, so there aren't many secular people. All the families and sects have disciples there. Oh, I understand. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Then, the Zhong family must not be in Cloud City, right? Yes, I'll send a message now, asking the family head to come and welcome me. Zhong Yejing said respectfully. All the disciples of my Zhong family are in Zhongling Mountain Village, south of Cloud City. With that, Zhong Yejing sent out a red messaging charm and asked again, Senior Xiao, do you want to wait in Cloud City? Once the family head receives the message, he will come and welcome you personally. Hihi, no need. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, I'm not that arrogant, let's hurry. Don't make the Zhong family head too tired. Yes, I'll listen to Senior's instructions. Zhong Yejing had observed Xiao Hua for the past 10 days and knew that he didn't have a strange temper. He was even very approachable, and his attitude was far from being proportional to his strength. However, after flying for a long time, not only did Zhong Yejing not see the family head coming to welcome her, but she also didn't receive a messaging charm. Her face became a little ugly. "Senior Xiao, I'm afraid that the family head can't come out to welcome me because of some family matters. Please forgive me," Zhong Yejing said carefully. Well said, well said." Xiao Hua waved his sleeves casually. "Your Zhong family has a lot of mundane affairs. Your family head must be very busy every day, and can't be compared to me. Even if he doesn't come out to welcome me, it's normal." Zhong Yejing smiled apologetically, but she was muttering in her heart. Although she didn't clearly explain what happened in the messaging charm, she did tell him that Xiao Hua's strength was outstanding, and that even a Foundation Establishment late-stage cultivator had to admit defeat. Finally, she especially said that Xiao Hua had the Qianmo secret stone in his hands, and asked the family head to come and welcome him. There was a patch of green grass, a small pond that rippled in the wind, and countless tall and sturdy trees that stood upright like guards. A villa with green bricks, green tiles, green grass, and white walls appeared in the midst of the green leaves that were like waves of the sea. Xiao Hua knew that this must be the Zhong family's Zhongling mountain village. -8. Chapter 2101. Because of politeness, Xiao Hua didn't release his divine sense. He just looked from afar with a thoughtful expression. "Senior." Zhong Yejing was too embarrassed to say anything. "Junior will send another summoning talisman, no need." Xiao Hua looked at Xue Xue and smiled. "You really don't need to trouble yourself." The corner of Zhong Yejing's mouth twitched a few times. She smiled apologetically and said, "Oh, okay." At this moment, a divine sense quickly swept over from the villa. When it passed by Xiao Hua and the others, it swept over Xiao Hua several times. However, Xiao Hua's expression was the same as usual, as if he didn't notice it at all. "Second uncle?" Zhong Yejing's expression changed slightly. She looked at Xiao Hua uneasily and whispered, "Senior Xiao, this is Junior's second uncle, Zhong Peifu. Junior doesn't know why Master didn't come." Xiao Hua was the same as before. He really was the same. He was far from what Zhong Yejing was worried about. A tall old cultivator flew over from the green leaves. He looked a little annoyed and impatient. He flew very fast. There seemed to be a few aura-refining disciples following behind him. They had already been left far behind. Second uncle Zhong Yejing saw that Zhong Peifu's expression wasn't right. She hurriedly flew over and bowed respectfully. "Is there something urgent in the family? Why didn't Master come out?" Zhong Peifu waved his hand and scolded, "What does a little girl like you know? Do you think that Master has to personally welcome any cultivator who comes to visit our Zhong family?" Second uncle. Zhong Yejing felt extremely wronged, but she didn't dare to say anything. She could only smile apologetically and say, "This is Xiao Hua, Senior Xiao." Jing'e already said clearly on the summoning talisman that Misty Cloud's sects Yun Qinglai and Yun Qingfeng, as well as Shu family's Shu Hong, suffered in front of Senior Xiao. Moreover, Jing'e personally saw a late Foundation Establishment cultivator begging for mercy in front of Senior Xiao. Zhong Peifu waved his hand and coldly glanced at Xiao Hua. He said, "This old man will naturally judge." As he spoke, Zhong Peifu patted his forehead and released the pressure of a late Foundation Establishment cultivator. "Second uncle, what are you doing?" Zhong Yejing was greatly shocked. She didn't expect that Zhong Peifu would actually release his pressure as soon as he came up. This was simply provoking Xiao Hua. But to Zhong Yejing's and Zhong Peifu's surprise, Xiao Hua didn't release any pressure at all, allowing Zhong Peifu to firmly suppress him. "What? This cultivator didn't resist at all? Isn't this putting your life in the hands of others?" Zhong Peifu didn't understand and felt even more uneasy. He looked at Xiao Hua's calm gaze, as if he was nothing. "If I wanted to take his life now, it would be as easy as lifting a finger." Zhong Peifu said hesitantly, "But I have no enmity with him, and he was invited by little Jing. How can I do it?" Zhong Peifu was in a bit of a dilemma. His original intention was to probe Xiao Hua's cultivation level. He had also stopped Zhong Yejing's transmission. He knew that Xiao Hua's cultivation level was only at the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. However, pressure couldn't be faked. As soon as Xiao Hua released his pressure, he would immediately know. But he didn't expect that Xiao Hua would ignore him. At this time, if Zhong Peifu withdrew his pressure, it would be tantamount to slapping his own face. Compared to Xiao Hua directly getting angry, or just defeating him, he would lose face. Xiao Hua's move was really sharp, like a needle hidden in silk floss. Don't tell me. I have to make a move. Zhong Peifu's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. Xiao Hua clearly saw Zhong Peifu's fierceness. He knew that he couldn't tease this late-stage foundation establishment realm old man anymore. Thus, Xiao Hua said indifferently, "Fellow Daoist Zhong, since you're probing, then stop before going too far. Don't do anything that would cause you to pull chestnuts out of the fire." Xiao Hua. Imperial Thunder Sect's Xiao Hua? At this time, a voice sounded, "Second Granduncle, this is Xiao Hua, fellow Daoist Xiao Hua, whom I met when I was traveling in the country of Shi. He is a good person. He gave me medicinal pills. Please show mercy." Xiao Hua smiled. Wasn't this the voice of the honest Zhong Haoran who was suppressed by Zhong Xiuhan? Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple? Zhong Peifu was shocked. Previously, when he heard Xiao Hua's warning, he was hesitant to withdraw his pressure. Now, with Zhong Haoran's mediation, he immediately withdrew it. He even cupped his hands and said, "So it's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. This Zhong didn't know, please forgive me." That's right, the Imperial Thunder Sect was a big sect in the country of Shi. It wasn't something the Zhong family could afford to offend. Even if Xiao Hua was really only an early-stage foundation establishment realm cultivator. Well said, well said. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said calmly, Senior Xiao." Zhong Haoran also flew to Xiao Hua. He first greeted him very intimately, but when he saw that Xiao Hua was already in the foundation establishment realm, he was slightly embarrassed and hurriedly changed his greeting. Xiao Hua had a very good impression of this little cultivator. He said with a smile, "Zhong Haoran, your progress is not small. Now you're already at the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining. You'll be able to step into the foundation establishment realm soon. Congratulations." A trace of pride flitted across Zhong Haoran's face, but it was immediately replaced by a slightly desolate expression. He smiled apologetically and said, "How can Junior compare to Senior Xiao? Junior only advanced from the 10th layer of qi refining to the 12th layer, but Senior immediately entered the foundation establishment realm. This is what Junior yearned for day and night. Hihi, everyone has their own destiny. You can't force it." Xiao Hua smiled. He then looked behind him and saw several unfamiliar disciples. He asked again, "What about Zhong Xiuhan? Has she already entered the foundation establishment realm?" "No." The desolate expression on Zhong Haoran's face became even more pronounced. "Senior sister hasn't entered the foundation establishment realm yet. Then she must be at the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining." Xiao Hua nodded. "Her aptitude seems to be better than yours." "Yes, indeed, but..." Zhong Haoran seemed to want to say something, but Zhong Peifu's gaze swept over him. He smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist Xiao, my Zhong family's patriarch couldn't come to welcome you because of some worldly affairs. I hope fellow Daoist can understand. Come, fellow Daoist, please. Patriarch is waiting for you in the reception hall." As he said that, Zhong Peifu gave a meaningful glance to a quick-witted disciple behind Zhong Haoran. That disciple hastily turned around and flew away. Xiao Hua followed Zhong Peifu and flew up. Xue followed behind him. Zhong Haoran hesitated for a moment then stopped. He wanted to wait for Zhong Yejing to leave before following them. However, Xiao Hua turned around and said, "Zhong Haoran, your eyes old acquaintance. Come and accompany I." Zhong Haoran's face lit up with joy. Just as he was about to fly up, Zhong Peifu gave him another order. Cough, cough. "Haoran, you're a junior. You can't accompany fellow Daoist Xiao. Follow behind your martial Aunt Jing. Yes, grandson understands. Zhong Haoran was silent. He nodded very calmly and silently stopped in midair. He waited for the others to fly up, and he followed behind them. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please. Zhong Peifu pointed at the scenery on the side as he walked. He said something in a low voice, but there wasn't any respect in his tone. After all, Xiao Hua was only in the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. He was at most a late-stage Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. Even if he was a disciple of the lightning controlling sect, he couldn't really be respected by a late-stage Foundation Establishment realm cultivator. -8. Chapter 2102. Zhong Yejing, who was behind Xiao Hua, clearly understood what was going on. She couldn't help but feel somewhat anxious in her heart. This Xiao Hua was truly somewhat mysterious. Not only did he use a divine ability, but his actions of helping the people of the secular world made Zhong Yejing feel that Xiao Hua was absolutely not a simple late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator. Not long after, Xiao Hua followed Zhong Peifu to the Zhongling Mountain Villa. It was a rather large gate, several times larger than the one Xiao Hua had seen in the Cai family in Luyang. Moreover, just like the Cai family, there was a vermilion gate in the middle. In fact, it was actually a plaque. The word Zhong on the plaque was extremely large. It also looked strange and different from the usual style. It actually looked somewhat like an armor inscription. On both sides of the main door were two side doors. Although they were also vermilion red, they were much smaller. At this moment, the side door on the left was already wide open. Several aura refining disciples were standing there, dressed in bright clothes. Fellow Daoist Xiao. Zhong Peifu pointed at the main door and smiled. My Zhong clan's clan head is a golden core cultivator. Therefore, the main door of my Zhong clan can only be opened by the clan head when a golden core cultivator or above comes to visit the Zhong clan. Fellow Daoist Xiao, although you're a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, you still have to go through this side door. It's fine. Xiao Hua seemed to have an extremely good temper. He didn't care about this kind of vulgar etiquette and nodded slightly. Please. Zhong Peifu gestured with his hand as he led Xiao Hua through the side door. Welcome to our Zhong clan, Senior Xiao. Several aura refining disciples bowed together. Their loud and clear voices soared into the sky. Ha. Xiao Hua slightly nodded. Fortunately, seeing that Xiao Hua's face didn't have any particular displeasure, Zhong Yejing's heart calmed down a little. Among the cultivation aristocratic families, Xiao Hua had been to Luyang's Cai family and Misty Mountain's Ling family. Obviously, the Zhong family's structure was similar to the Cai family's, but the Zhong family's manner was far from comparable to the Cai family's. Not to mention the area it occupied, and not to mention the pavilions, terraces, and pavilions, but from time to time, immortal birds would appear, and from time to time, there would be strange flowers and plants by the side of the lake. This made Xiao Hua's eyes light up, and he knew that the Zhong family's foundation was also extraordinary. No matter what, the Zhong family's patriarch, Zhong Qianyao, was also a golden core cultivator. If the Zhong family did not have a solid foundation, it would be impossible for them to have such a patriarch. There was no need to elaborate on the scenery of the Zhongling Mountain Villa. Under Zhong Peifu's guidance, Xiao Hua arrived at a unique courtyard. Seeing Zhong Peifu walk straight in, Zhong Yejing frowned slightly. She sighed in her heart and regained her composure. She had already done what she could and said what she needed to say. This was all arranged by the patriarch and she had nothing to say. Inside the courtyard was a quiet hall. It was also quite large. An old man with white hair sat in the middle of the hall. He was holding a book in his hand and his eyebrows were slightly furrowed. It was unknown whether he was reading or thinking. Beside the old man sat a skinny old man. He was in the late stage of foundation establishment. He had a bitter expression on his face, but it was impossible to tell what his expression was. Reporting to Patriarch, this is Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder sect. He is the cultivator that Jinga brought here. Zhong Peifu bowed and said. Oh, so you're a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Zhong Tianyao put down the book in his hand and swept his gaze over Xiao Hua. At the same time, he also used a spell to sense Xiao Hua's cultivation. He smiled and said, "No wonder he could scare off a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. This disciple of a large sect is indeed formidable." Junior Xiao Hua greets Senior Zhong. Xiao Hua didn't dare to neglect and bowed to greet Zhong Tianyao. Sit down." Zhong Tianyao pointed at Xiao Hua and said, "Thank you, Senior, for granting me a seat." Xiao Hua modestly sat beside Xue Xue. Xue Xue lowered her head and didn't say a word. However, she was somewhat angry in her heart. She understood in her heart that even if she, an aura-refining cultivator, didn't reveal her identity, not to mention Xiao Hua. Since she had already revealed her identity, she represented the Imperial Thunder Sect and the Zhong family to receive her in the real welcoming hall. Of course, the etiquette of an aura-refining cultivator towards a golden core cultivator was universal in the Xiaoyu continent, regardless of your identity. Zhong Tianyao receiving Xiao Hua here was rude in terms of etiquette. In terms of attitude, he was looking down on Xiao Hua. When the Zhong family disciple served the spirit tea, the cultivator at the side said, "Jing what you said in the summoning talisman was unclear. Now, explain the ins and outs of the matter in front of the master. Why are you with the disciples of Misty Cloud's sect and Shu family?" "Yes, third uncle." Zhong Yejing glanced at Xiao Hua and was slightly apologetic. It seemed that there were some problems because she said something without Xiao Hua's consent. Zhong Yejing's expression naturally didn't escape Zhong Tianyao's eyes, or perhaps Zhong Yejing wanted the clan head to see it. Following which, Zhong Yejing briefly recounted the matter of her looking for Shu Hong, as well as the matter of White Bamboo Mountain. Of course, regarding the matter of the talisman, Zhong Yejing didn't mention it, only saying that Shu Hong invited her to help. Zhong Peiyuan and the others heard clearly and knew that Zhong Yejing was hiding something in her words. However, they didn't ask too much. They only heard Zhong Peiyuan ask faintly, "So, Shu Hong's Chen Mo secret stone has already fallen into Xiao Hua's hands?" His gaze, however, drifted towards Xiao Hua. "Yes. Good, it's been hard on you. Jing you can leave." Zhong Peiyuan nodded. "But, third uncle, Senior Xiao." Zhong Yejing didn't know what Xiao Hua was thinking. She didn't dare to mention the matter of the gold leaf in advance. At this time, she was a little anxious. "It's fellow Daoist Xiao, not Senior Xiao." Zhong Peiyuan said faintly, "Although my Yuncheng Zhong family can't be compared to a famous sect, it's still a famous cultivation family in Meng country. There's no need to lower your status." "Yes, third uncle." Zhong Yejing felt a little wronged, but she didn't dare to contradict. She bowed, looked at Xiao Hua again, and retreated. "You all can leave too." Following the order, the other disciples also left. "Xiao Hua." Zhong Peiyuan stared at Xiao Hua and asked, "I don't want to know what you did at White Bamboo Mountain. Let me ask you, you took the Chen Mo secret stone from Shu Hong's hands. Do you want to exchange it with my Zhong family? How do you know that my Zhong family needs Chen Mo secret stone? Do you want to use Chen Mo secret stone to threaten my Zhong family?" Xiao Hua was very funny. Zhong Yejing could clearly explain the matter, but Zhong Peiyuan didn't let her finish. Moreover, without waiting for him to speak, Zhong Peiyuan self-righteously put the hat of threatening on his head. Could it be that he really thinks that because his cultivation is high, he can distinguish right from wrong and can see through things at a glance? Xiao Hua couldn't help but criticize. However, Zhong Tianyao and Zhong Peifu both stared at Xiao Hua without blinking. Their eyes were full of vigilance, as if what Zhong Peiyuan said was their inner thoughts. Xiao Hua was very helpless. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Daoist Zhong misunderstood." Then, Xiao Hua told the matter of him meeting Zhong Peiyuan at the auction in Chiua City. Finally, he smiled apologetically and said, "I didn't know that you was fellow Daoist Zhong." Just as fellow Daoist Zhong said, "When I heard that she wanted to exchange Chen Mo secret stone with Shu Hong, my heart moved and I remembered this matter. How did you know Howren?" Zhong Peifu's eyes were still flickering as he asked in a low voice. "This is even more of a coincidence." Xiao Hua smiled and said, I met him when I went to the netherworld after leaving Chiua City. This old man knows. Zhong Peiyuan waved his hand and said, Howren seems to have mentioned this before, but this old man was in a bad mood at that time and didn't remember carefully. Then, Zhong Peiyuan looked at Xiao Hua and asked, So, fellow Daoist Xiao's purpose is the 2 gold foil of my Zhong family? Yes, it's the 2 gold foil. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and took out a few pieces of Qian Mo secret stone. He smiled and said, This Xiao found a few pieces of Qian Mo secret stone in the past few years to find the owner of the gold foil to exchange. Now is a coincidence. Please take a look, Senior Zhong. Unexpectedly, Zhong Tianyao didn't seem to be interested in the Qian Mo secret stone. He scanned it with his divine sense and said indifferently, Actually, the gold foil of my Zhong family is exchanged for the Qian Mo secret stone. The main thing is that I want to know what this gold foil is and what it's used for. This. Xiao Hua was startled. He looked at Zhong Tianyao a few times and shook his head. Sorry, this is this Xiao's business. Forgive this Xiao for not telling you. Oh. Zhong Tianyao narrowed his eyes and said, Since you can't tell this old man what the gold foil is used for, then this old man can't exchange with you with the gold foil. Senior Zhong Tilda Xiao Hua was anxious and said, The gold foil is just a dead thing in the Zhong family. The Zhong family doesn't need it at all. Why can't you exchange it? Could it be that the Zhong family doesn't want to use the Qian Mo secret stone to repair magic tools? Repairing magic tools or not is my Zhong family's business. Zhong Peiyuan sneered and said, Could it be that fellow Daoist Xiao wants to forcefully exchange with my Zhong family? Why can't I? Aren't the so-called big cultivation sects all like this? Without resorting to trickery, how can they become a big sect? How can they dominate a region? Zhong Peifu said sarcastically, although the Imperial Thunder sect is far away in the country of Xi, their fame is spread throughout the entire Xiaoyu continent. Their disciples can even be arrogant in Meng country. What do you 2 fellow Taoists mean? Xiao Hua sneered, If you don't want to exchange, then don't exchange. Why do you have to speak so viciously? These words are related to this Xiao's sect. Fellow Daoist, do you mind this Xiao bringing these words back? What? Did this Zhong offend the Imperial Thunder sect with just a few words? Zhong Peiyuan stood up and said angrily, Just based on these few words. Imperial Thunder sect dares to come to my Meng country and exterminate my Zhong family? Do you think you have this opportunity? Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua stood up and laughed loudly. He really felt that it was funny. A late Foundation establishment cultivator, no matter what, had a lifespan of several hundred years. He had seen many more things than him, but why did he look like a loose cultivator at the early qi refining stage? He didn't know the gravity of his words. This Xiao wants to see what ability your Zhong clan has to keep this Xiao here. Xiao Hua coldly said after he finished laughing. At White Bamboo Mountain, you injured Xu Hong and intimidated a late Foundation establishment cultivator. Was it just for Jing to see? Zhong Tianyao said indifferently, Even if you are a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, even if your cultivation is comparable to a late Foundation establishment cultivator, don't forget that this old man is a gold core cultivator. In this old man's eyes, you are just a child. Besides, without the clan head here, this old man and 2 late Foundation establishment cultivators can't kill a late Foundation establishment cultivator. Not to mention an qi refining cultivator. Zhong Peiyuan said even more arrogantly, Even if the late Foundation establishment cultivator escapes, will this qi refining female cultivator still be alive? -8. Chapter 2103. Hearing these words, Xiao Hua's face instantly turned cold, truly cold. There was no longer a trace of indifference in his original tone. If fellow Daoist Zhong wants to try, then feel free to make a move. I don't have the confidence to protect my wife in front of a core formation cultivator. However, I am confident that I can escape from the hands of a golden core adept. As long as I leave, other than the golden core adepts of the Zhong family, I will not touch them. As for the other disciples, I will kill them all. Are you threatening me? Zhong Tianyao's face was even colder. If his gaze could kill, It would have poked many holes in Xiao Hua's body. At this moment, the dignity of a core formation cultivator was facing the provocation of an initial stage foundation establishment cultivator. Senior Zhong, can't you see that this junior is explaining the facts to fellow Daoist Zhong? Xiao Hua said word by word. What this junior said is the truth. I didn't speak a word of nonsense. Good, good, good. Zhong Peiyuan laughed from extreme anger. He couldn't help but stand up. Why are all the disciples of cultivation sects so arrogant? I won't say anything about the core formation cultivator from before. He opened his mouth and said that he would destroy my Zhong clan. You, an insignificant initial stage foundation establishment cultivator, actually dares to be arrogant in front of me. Today, I'm going to stake it all. Even if I have to destroy jade and common stone, so what? Xiao Hua sneered. Although words can be said casually, your hands can't be stretched out carelessly. Once you make a move, the consequences will be very serious. Seeing that Xiao Hua only spoke and didn't make any moves, he was terrifyingly calm. Sure enough, Zhong Peiyuan was somewhat hesitant. The thought of stretching out his hand to release pressure could only flash through his mind again and again. Since the words had already been said, if he made a move, there was no possibility of probing. Xiao Hua would definitely go all out in a spurt of energy like a tiger. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan stand up, Zhong Peifu naturally couldn't help but stand up as well. His gaze actually wasn't looking at Xiao Hua, but rather at Xue Xue. Old second, old third. Zhong Tianyaro seemed to be doing his utmost to restrain himself. His grizzled hair and beard were trembling. At this moment, he slapped his hand on the chair and said angrily, "You two, shut up. You nearly caused trouble before, and now you still want to talk. Didn't you hear that the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples want to challenge my Zhong clan? Could it be that you're waiting for me to make a move?" Hearing this, Zhong Peiyuan was pleasantly surprised. He slapped his forehead and released the pressure of a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, then this old man will teach this arrogant disciple a lesson on behalf of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Let him know the principle of respecting high-level cultivators." At the same time, Zhong Peifu wasn't slow either. He had already prepared his aura and slammed it towards Xue Xue. Seeing that the Zhong clan's people were really going to make a move, Xiao Hua was furious. He reached out and pulled Xue Xue's little hand that was stretched out to the side. He transmitted his voice, "Don't use your transcendence energy." Xue Xue originally wanted to use the flight technique, but after hearing Xiao Hua's words, she immediately stopped the flow of true qi. However, Xiao Hua's figure flew up, and all of a sudden, he pulled Xue Xue into his arms. His other hand clapped, and the pressure of a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator was similarly released. With a boom, the pressure of two late-stage foundation establishment cultivators collided with Xiao Hua's pressure, setting off a burst of qi wave. "Mph, you're actually in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. You've concealed it well." Zhong Tianyaro sat steadily on the seat of honor and released his divine sense. There wasn't any surprise on his face, and he only coldly snorted. However, what happened next shocked him. In his opinion, under the pressure of two late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, wouldn't Xiao Hua be helpless? Because pressure was something that couldn't be faked. However, Xiao Hua's figure only trembled slightly, and then he swam like a fish. His figure slid slightly, and he flew towards the entrance of the hall. If it was a month ago, Xiao Hua definitely wouldn't have such a method. He would definitely have released his Phoenix Dharma body and resisted. In other words, Xiao Hua had some subtle understanding of the nameless secret art that matched his comprehension in the past 10 days. Although he couldn't further improve in concealing his cultivation level, he had a remarkable ability in evading pressure that others couldn't think of. "After coming to my Zhong clan, you still want to leave?" Zhong Tianyaro waved his hand, but light flew out. It wasn't Xiao Hua, but the four walls of the hall. Magic power rippled on the four walls, and a jade-green brilliance emerged from the center of the four walls. It was divided into two layers, one facing upwards and the other facing downwards, rapidly surging. Seeing that the pressure was ineffective, Zhong Peiyuan rubbed his hands, and several rays of brilliance flew out from his hands. Countless sparks were produced, and they flew towards Xiao Hua's back. Xiao Hua knew that Zhong Tianyao wouldn't directly make a move because of his status. He clapped his hands, and the soaring dragon scissors flew out of the space. A golden light flashed, and the soaring dragon scissors directly chopped towards the hall's entrance that was close at hand. With a rumbling sound, the jade-green brilliance that had already flooded the hall's entrance was split apart like a jade wave, and it rolled backward. Not only that, the sharpness of the soaring dragon scissors also split open the entire hall's entrance. Amidst the sound, the hall's entrance and part of the hard stones were split open by the huge force, as if they were blown apart by a fireball talisman. 3 shameless old things. Xiao Hua's figure swayed rapidly, and in the blink of an eye, he already arrived at the hall's entrance. Zhong Tianyao also couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. He reprimanded in a low voice, and just as he was about to cast a spell, he saw Xiao Hua fling his hand without even turning his head. Hundreds of fireball talismans flew out, precisely blocking Zhong Peiyuan's cluster of sparks. Moreover, within those fireball talismans, there was also a wall of true samadhi fire that Xiao Hua cast. With a rumbling sound, it was as if the mountains were shaking and the earth was quaking. It was as if the entire hall was going to be overturned by the explosion. This explosion and wall of fire just happened to block Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu. Zhong Tianyao's face slightly changed. He swung his sleeve, covering the entire fireball talisman and wall of fire. Like a whirlwind sweeping away clouds, all the fireballs and wall of fire disappeared. But it was also in this blink of an eye that Xiao Hua and Shueishue's figures had already rushed out of the hall. By the time Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu flew out of the hall, Xiao Hua and Shueishue's figures had already faded. In the sky above the entire Zhongling mountain villa, Xiao Hua's cold and eerie words floated. Since your Zhong family dares to make a move, then this young master won't be polite. Zhong Tianyao, just wait for this young master to kill your Zhong family's disciples one by one. Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu's noses were crooked from anger. If you say you want to escape, then escape. You actually let out such big words, and let the entire Zhongling mountain villa hear it. This was really a naked slap to their own face. How dare you? Zhong Peiyuan shouted. He simply didn't think and didn't even look at Zhong Peifu. His figure swayed, and he was about to fly out of the villa. On the other hand, Zhong Peifu's eyes turned, and he shouted, Patriarch, quickly open the villa's restrictive spell. All of you come back. Zhong Tianyao's voice sounded, and his tone was also filled with shame and anger. -8. Chapter 2104. Zhong Peiyuan and Zhong Peifu looked at each other helplessly. Gritting their teeth, they floated down and landed in front of the hall that no longer had a door. At this time, several Zhong family disciples sneakily poked their heads out and looked over, not knowing what happened. What are you looking at? Why aren't you cleaning this place up? Zhong Peifu glared at them, an indescribable feeling in his heart. When they stood in front of Zhong Tianyao, they stole a glance at Zhong Tianyao's gloomy face. You talk too much. Will you die if you speak less? Zhong Tianyao shouted at Zhong Peiyuan, if you didn't stir up trouble, would this old man be so passive? It was like this before, and it was like this just now. Family head, Zhong Peiyuan felt extremely wronged. Boy was also unwilling. Who knows where he leaked the news and let that guy know? And this Imperial Thunder Sect brat is even more arrogant than that guy. Cultivation sects are all sanctimonious things. Zhong Tianyao snorted coldly, but they are powerful, not something our cultivation sects can compare to. We can't afford to offend them, but can't we hide? Which cultivator would be able to tolerate such words from you? Moreover, Imperial Thunder Sect is famous for their flying techniques. You also saw it just now. Xiao Hua is only a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. His flying speed far surpasses yours. If this old man doesn't use his divine ability, I'm afraid I can't catch up to him. Zhong Tianyao didn't say anything. With a wave of his sleeve, he flew out of the hall. Second brother, you say, what's all this about? Zhong Peiyuan waved his hand, and the chairs beside him were destroyed. He sat down, picked up the teacup beside him, and drank the spiritual tea in one breath. Who knows? Zhong Peifu also gritted his teeth and sat down. We can't afford to offend that guy from before. A middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator came. We thought he could blow the sky apart. But who would have thought that not only was this guy's cultivation not bad, his magic treasure was also extremely powerful. Moreover, his ability to escape was even comparable to a Jindan. No wonder we brothers were defeated. Speaking up to hear, Zhong Peifu pondered for a moment, then said in a low voice, "Third brother, Xiaohua just said some ruthless words. Of course, we aren't afraid, but our Zhong family's disciples number in the thousands. None of them are Xiaohua's match. Shouldn't we make some preparations?" Zhong Peiyuan frowned for a moment before he smiled. "There's no need for that. After all, we didn't hurt his lover. He didn't have any reason to lower himself and hurt a disciple of our Zhong family. I think he's just saying it casually. He's also a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. He wouldn't be so shameless." That's true. Since the Patriarch didn't order us to do anything about it, we don't have to worry about it. Zhong Peifu nodded. "We'd better think of another way." "Damn it, that's right. How can we not think of a way?" Zhong Peiyuan naturally knew what Zhong Peifu was talking about. He said fiercely, "My Zhong family has been accumulating things for decades, or even hundreds of years, and they were taken away by that bastard in an instant. How can we not be angry? That artifact was passed down from my ancestors and is related to the bloodline of my Zhong family. If it can be repaired successfully, it will be able to awaken the true spirit bloodline of my clansmen. It's extremely important to my Zhong family. We can't not repair it. If that Xiaohua had come a few years earlier, my Zhong family would have been able to obtain the last Qian Mo secret stone. We would have already started to repair the artifact." Zhong Peifu sighed. "Ari, it's really fate that makes fools of people. It's too late to say anything now." Zhong Peiyuan waved his hand. "We'll rest for a while and continue to collect. How could it be so simple?" Zhong Peifu curled his lips. "The most difficult Qian Mo secret stone. What? Is Xiaohua the only one in the Xiaoyu continent who has the Qian Mo secret stone?" Zhong Peiyuan said angrily. "Even you want to blame this old man?" "No, how could it be?" Zhong Peifu smiled apologetically. "Third brother has worked hard and taken many risks. He's the one who has contributed the most to my Zhong family. Let's go, let's go." Zhong Peiyuan was a little dispirited. He waved his hand and walked out of the hall with his hands behind his back. After the two of them left, the disciples of the Zhong family naturally rushed over to repair the hall that was destroyed by Xiaohua. Seeing how badly damaged the hall was, the disciples of the Zhong family were all dumbfounded. Of course, they knew how powerful the restrictive spell in the hall was. While they were guessing in a low voice, Xiaohua's fame quickly spread throughout the Zhongling mountain villa. Xue only knew that Xiaohua's flying speed was extremely fast. However, when she truly experienced the speed, she realized that she had underestimated Xiaohua's flying speed. She only felt the scenery in front of her fly away at an extremely fast speed. Her vision blurred for a moment. Her figure had already flown out of the Zhongling mountain villa while Xiaohua slowly stopped in midair. "Husband." Xiaohua's hand was still around Xue's waist. His brows were slightly wrinkled as he looked at the Zhongling mountain villa in the distance. No one knew what he was thinking. Xue asked in a low voice, "Husband won't really kill the disciples of the Zhong family, right?" "Hihi, of course not." Xiaohua withdrew his gaze and said with a smile, "When have you seen your husband kill people indiscriminately? Your husband is just angry that Zhong Peiyuan actually used my wife's safety to threaten your husband and randomly scared them." "Exactly. That Zhong family's patriarch is really rude. He himself doesn't know the use of the gold leaf and instead forced my husband to say it. If he knew the use of the gold leaf, why would he still exchange it?" Xue also echoed. Even if they knew the use of the gold leaf, they wouldn't be able to use it." Xiaohua coldly snorted. "However, your husband feels that he won't leak the use of the gold leaf. Then what do we do now?" Shui Shui slightly wrinkled her brows. We've already fallen out with the Zhong family. Zhong Tianyao will definitely not exchange the gold leaf with my husband. If he doesn't want to exchange, then so be it. From his tone, I'm afraid that he was forced to do something he didn't want to do. He didn't have the ability to get back at them and instead wanted to vent his anger on this young master. How can this young master let them have their way? Xiao Hua curled his lips and said, since they did it, then they can't blame this young master for doing it 15 times. Hey, husband, what do you think? Shui Shui somewhat strangely asked. In her heart, Xiao Hua had always advocated being straightforward and upright. She couldn't think of any reason that Xiao Hua had to persuade Zhong Tianyao to exchange with him. What do I think? No idea. Xiao Hua spread out his hands with a helpless look. Wouldn't it be fine if your husband went over and snatched the gold leaf? Ah! Shui Shui covered her mouth. What Xiao Hua said was indeed a common method used by cultivators. However, this most common method coming from Xiao Hua's mouth really made Shui Shui feel strange. She couldn't help but ask, husband, this kind of action doesn't seem to be your usual behavior. What does your husband usually do? Xiao Hua said with a smile. Husband has always prioritized others. Husband has never used the strong to bully the weak. Husband has never done things that harm others for his own benefit. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua stuck out his chest, raised his head, and patted his chest. He laughed and said, I didn't expect your husband to be so perfect in your eyes. Of course, Shui Shui said proudly. Husband is the most perfect male cultivator in Xiaoyu continent. How could other cultivators work for people in the secular world who starve to death? Just based on this, husband can make all the female cultivators have a whole new level of respect for you. Hehe, so that's how it is. I was wondering why my wife would say such a thing. Xiao Hua suddenly said, your husband isn't a stickler for rules. For the sake of other people's opinions, I don't care about my own benefit. This is a completely different matter from caring for the common people. Hey, why? Shui Shui was somewhat puzzled. Xiao Hua pointed his finger and said, that gold leaf obviously has no use in the Zhong family. They just treated it as an ordinary thing and threw it in the ancestral hall. Your husband didn't harm their benefits by taking it, so why can't I? Besides, this gold leaf is extremely important to your husband's cultivation. Even if it harms the Zhong family's benefits, it can still be exchanged for the benefits of more people. Your husband naturally has to take it. Hehe, husband's reason seems to be what every cultivator thinks when they do this. Shui Shui said with a smile. However, she didn't go into detail. She knew that Xiao Hua had a sense of propriety, so she was somewhat worried. If there were only 2 late-stage foundation establishment cultivators, I wouldn't be worried. However, the Zhong family's patriarch is a golden core cultivator. Husband must be careful. Hehe, isn't it just a small Zhong family? Xiao Hua swept a glance at the distant Zhongling mountain villa and thought with a sneer. This young master really isn't afraid. Besides, the Zhong family's disciples actually threatened my wife's life in front of me. If I don't teach them a lesson, how can I let them know how powerful your husband is? All right. Shui Shui's eyes looked at Xiao Hua. A strange expression flickered in her eyes. She seemed to have sensed that an incomparably sharp awl was gradually appearing. Anyone who ignored this sharp awl would most likely be injured by this awl. Immediately, Xiao Hua smiled and said to Shui Shui, let's go, my wife. We'll go further away from here. This place is really a dragon's pool and a tiger's den. Hee. Shui Shui was originally somewhat depressed. She felt that she was holding Xiao Hua back. At this moment, she smiled and said, since it's a dragon's pool and a tiger's den, you can even charge out. Your husband is a hero who punched the South Mountain's sky-eyed tiger and stepped on the North Sea's tide dragon. How can I be afraid of these small shrimps? Xiao Hua pulled Shui Shui and flew far away. He still didn't forget to tease the Zhong family. Shui Shui originally thought that Xiao Hua would find a place to stop around the Zhong family. However, she didn't expect that Xiao Hua would fly for dozens of li without any intention of stopping. She couldn't help but be surprised and asked, husband, where are we going? Won't we be far away if we continue flying? Oh, your husband thought about it just now. We just finished threatening them. If we go to look for the gold leaf now, I'm afraid that they'll be on guard. Maybe the gold leaf is still on Zhong Tianyao. Your husband can only get the gold leaf if I kill Zhong Tianyao. Xiao Hua smiled and said, rather than that, it's better to wait for them to forget about this matter. Your husband can secretly come back and take it away. Then, we'll find a place to meditate. My wife, you should meditate first. Familiarize yourself with the cultivation method again so that you can find an opportunity to consume the Ling Lei pill. Your husband will go take a look around and send some good seeds to the secular people near Yun City, Xiao Hua said. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chijian. -8. Chapter 2105. Xue thought for a moment and nodded. Husband, go ahead. I fly slowly and my cultivation base is also shallow. I can only be your stumbling block. Don't worry about it. After you build your foundation, you'll be powerful. Xiao Hua comforted her. Just based on the medicinal power of the Ling Lei pill, your husband can guess a thing or two. I hope so. Xue smiled sweetly. I want to lend my husband a hand. Thus, Xiao Hua found a secret place and set up the rabbit formation. He let Xue go into seclusion inside while he flew out and went to the surroundings of Yun City. There, he distributed the good seeds that had been piled up like a mountain to the many secular people. To the north of the country of Shi, there were endless hills. The hills were high and low, undulating continuously. Low thorny vegetation covered the hills, piercing sharply into the air in the cold wind. Somewhere, where the sun was shining brightly, a thick fog suddenly rose up. That thick fog quickly dispersed with the cold wind. Wherever the fog passed, the thorns on the hills were dyed with a layer of light brown. That brown color was similar to the color of the thorns. Not to mention the naked eye, even if one's divine sense swept over, it would be impossible to see clearly if one didn't examine it carefully. Immediately after, 1,000 feet away, another thick fog rose up, still floating in the surrounding area of several hundred feet. This process was repeated over and over again. Waves of thick fog rose up and slowly pushed forward. After an unknown period of time, the last wave of fog fell and a hazy figure appeared from the fog. It was the mysterious black-cloaked fellow Daoist from the Eastern Mountain. Fellow Daoist from East Mountain's gaze swept past the thorns and let out a satisfied laugh. Then, he carefully bent down and looked at the thorns and the hills again. With a wave of his hand, he took out a dark green object. That object was more than 3 inches long, sparkling and translucent, faintly emitting a luster. Fellow Daoist from East Mountain touched that object to the thorns, but the brown color on the thorns changed slightly, as if it was transferred to the dark green object. The entire object turned completely brown, its brilliance faded, and the luster also disappeared, turning into a withered branch. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain didn't wait for the object's brilliance to fade. He immediately flicked his hand, and the object fell to the ground with a bang. It was extremely hard. Heh. Fellow Daoist East Mountain was very pleased with the result. He leaped up, and as if he were climbing a flight of stairs, he took a few steps up into the air. Then, his body began to fade away as he flew toward the area surrounded by the black fog. Shockingly, the black fog covered an area of over 50 kilometers. However, even though it was hundreds of miles long, it seemed so insignificant in the face of this boundless hilly land. Fellow Daoist East Mountain? After flying for dozens of miles, Fairy Ingzhua was frowning slightly as she stood in midair. Below her, there were thousands of Foundation Establishment stage disciples holding all kinds of strange materials in their hands. Their hands were forming strange seals, and from time to time, a faint green light flashed. As the green light bloomed, the materials disappeared on the ground or in midair. Fairy Ingzhua seemed to have sensed something. She exclaimed softly and looked up. Fellow Daoist Ingzhua's cultivation has indeed improved. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain's figure appeared in Fairy Ingzhua's eyes. If it was 10 years ago, Fellow Daoist definitely wouldn't be able to sense Ai's aura. That's right. Fairy Yingzhe nodded slightly. Under fellow Daoist's guidance, my cultivation has really made some inconceivable progress. However, this progress seems to be somewhat unequal to my Xuanyan school's contribution. Fairy Yingzhe's brows relaxed as she looked below her. All right, I'll let fellow Daoist Yingzhe know. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain didn't seem to be angry. He smiled and said, I can clearly see fellow Daoist's contribution, and I also understand that I will definitely not go back on my words. I will definitely help fellow Daoist distract your attention. Furthermore, fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain glanced at the thousands of people below his feet, and said, Fellow Daoist Yingzhe, although you spent a lot of effort to collect these materials for setting up the formation, I completely handed over this 8 desolate spirit capture formation to fellow Daoist. Not only did fellow Daoist obtain this ancient formation for free, these thousands of Foundation Establishment disciples have also learned the Tao of Formation from I's secret manual. For the development of Xuanyan School. Fellow Daoist Yingzhe, don't say that you have no use at all. Fairy Yingzhe smiled and nodded. It's precisely because of this that I will use the strength of the entire school to help fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain. It's just that. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain, I have some doubts. Fellow Daoist has to deal with, who is it? With fellow Daoist's magic power, don't tell me, you still have to go through so much trouble. Fairy Yingzhe hesitated for a moment, and asked via voice transmission. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain's face turned cold. Although his entire body was hidden in a cloak, Fairy Yingzhe could clearly feel the surrounding temperature drop. She heard a faint voice. Fellow Daoist Yingzhe, according to our agreement, you can't know about this matter. Furthermore, with your current cultivation, knowing about this matter will only bring you disadvantages and not benefits. Why do you have to be so nosy? Fairy Yingzhe was a bit embarrassed, and the corner of her mouth curled up. I will use the strength of the entire school, so naturally I have to consider the situation of Xuanyan School. If there is something that harms the foundation of our humble school, I will have to consider it. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain seemed to be thinking, and after a moment, he said, What I do, no one in the Xiaoyu continent will know. Don't worry, when you enter the deity transformation stage, perhaps you will have the qualifications to know some things. I also want to see the situation and tell you some things. Oh, your school's disciples really have a foundation. This formation seems to be about to be completed. Is that so? When Fairy Yingzhe heard this, her face lit up with joy. She used her divine sense and said, This 8 Desolation Spirit Detention Formation has been set up for several years, and it is finally about to be completed. I also want to see the might of this ancient formation. Haha, fellow Daoist Yingzhe, I'm afraid you can't see it yet. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain laughed heartily, seeming to be in an extremely good mood. After this 8 Desolation Spirit Detention Formation is set up, it still needs to slowly absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, gradually smoothing out the formation's imperfections, and fusing the formation's traces with the heavens and earth. Only then can it be used. Otherwise, if even fellow Daoist can see the formation's traces, how can I's enemies fall into the trap? There's this kind of trouble. Fairy Yingzhe was a bit flabbergasted. I thought that it was rare to see a formation that could be set up for 100 miles. Who would have thought that this formation actually needs to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth? Of course, I see that the existing formations on your Xiaoyu continent are all formation tools like formation plates and formation flags. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth used by those formations is stored in the formation tools beforehand. The fluctuations of these spiritual qi of heaven and earth are different from the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It is extremely easy for others to see. I's formation emphasizes on fusion, using the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth as its foundation. Fellow Daoist can still see the formation's traces now, but after several months to half a year, you definitely won't be able to sense it with your divine sense. Fellow Daoist Eastern Mountain said proudly, otherwise, how could I let fellow Daoist collect so many rare materials? -8. Chapter 2106. Sigh, I can be considered ignorant in front of fellow Daoist East Mountain. Fairy Yingzhou sighed. He tilde fellow Daoist East Mountain flew to the center of the 8 desolate spirit capture formation and scanned the entire formation with his divine sense. He was very satisfied and transmitted his voice, in half a day, this formation will take shape. At that time, fellow Daoist Yingzhou will lead your sect's disciples according to the previous plan and withdraw from all directions. I will then use the final spell to activate the formation. Oh, is it the spell that consumes a lot of magic power and divine sense at the end of fellow Daoist East Mountain's formation? Fairy Yingzhou asked thoughtfully. That's right. After using these spells, I will consume a lot of my own power. I have no choice but to find a place to meditate first. Fellow Daoist East Mountain nodded and said, Fellow Daoist Yingzhou, during this period, you still have to diligently inquire about that person's whereabout. Yes, I understand. When Fairy Yingzhou said this, she looked like she wanted to say something but hesitated. What? Fellow Daoist Yingzhou doesn't believe in I? Fellow Daoist East Mountain was very sensitive and noticed this and asked curiously. That's not it. Fairy Yingzhou thought for a while and transmitted her voice. I only received a tip from a disciple. Ever since we got a clue about that person, my Xuanyan sect has done its best to pay attention to that person's whereabouts. In order to not be discovered by that person, we used countless methods. It's really exhausting. Furthermore, I can't guarantee that I won't be discovered. This isn't what fellow Daoist should consider. Fellow Daoist East Mountain waved his hand and said, that person's magic power is profound. Even if he was discovered, it wouldn't be surprising. What I want to say is that that person's whereabouts are uncertain, as if he's looking for something. Fairy Yingzhou clenched her teeth and said, He, fellow Daoist Yingzhou also noticed. Fellow Daoist East Mountain laughed and said, I can't answer this question because I also don't know what that person is looking for. And it's precisely because I sensed that this person was looking for something that I had no choice but to make a move. If that person finds that thing, I'm afraid it would be an abnormal disaster. I had no choice but to make a move in advance. Oh, I see. Fairy Yingzhou nodded slightly, as if this was the first time she had heard such news from fellow Daoist East Mountain. About half a day later, the sun had already set in the western mountains. The gorgeous blood-red color burned through the western sky, casting a dusky light over the hills. Fairy Yingzhou and the other Xuanyan disciples gradually flew away, like flies leaving their nest. They scattered in 2s and 3s in all directions. When everyone was far away and their divine senses could not reach, they saw fellow Daoist of Eastern Mountain's body tremble and quickly rush into the sky. When he reached a height of several hundred feet, his body suddenly stopped. His divine sense was like a torrential flood, covering an area of 100 miles, scanning inch by inch. Only after 2 hours did his divine sense stop. Fellow Daoist East Mountain then clapped his hands, and a green formation diagram several feet in size appeared in his hand. Fellow Daoist East Mountain shook his hand, and the formation diagram unfurled in the air. At this time, it could be seen clearly that the formation diagram was actually made up of pieces of green seal text. These green seal text seemed to be separated from each other, but also seemed to have a mysterious connection, forming the entire formation diagram. Fellow Daoist East Mountain opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of green blood on the formation diagram. The green brilliance on the formation diagram became brighter, and in the evening sky, it appeared extremely strained. The formation diagram appeared with the brilliance, and it became increasingly larger, gradually turning from several feet to several feet, and then gradually expanding again. At this time, fellow Daoist East Mountain's body began to tremble again, and a series of cryptic syllables came out from his cloak. As the syllables rushed into the formation diagram, the green seal text scattered in all directions like tadpoles leaving their nest, and the formation diagram was enlarged again. What was inconceivable was that as the green seal text swam in the air, many strange phenomena flashed in the air. Clusters of green light accompanied by wisps of black fog appeared in the void, entangling the green seal text. Sounds like the wailing of ghosts came from the void. A pitch-black color, darker than the night sky, first appeared, then condensed, forming thin threads, 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 and even thin thread. Rumble tilde. The faint sound of thunder came from the sky above the formation diagram, which was already close to 100 miles in size. It seemed that many strange phenomena had attracted the might of the heavens, but the thunder and lightning were extremely weak, and only lit up this part of the sky a little. Seeing the green light mixed with the black mist and the green seal text, fellow Daoist East Mountain raised his head and let out a long howl. His body trembled violently again, and two identical fellow Taoists of East Mountain separated. This was clearly a spirit-severing cultivator's ability. However, to everyone's surprise, the two fellow Taoists of East Mountain swayed again, and actually split into four. The four cloaked fellow Taoists of East Mountain flew to the four corners of the formation diagram, and at the same time, used the green seal text. At this time, along with four rhythmic syllables, four flame-like green lights flew out from the four corners of the formation diagram, and clustered around the feet of the four fellow Taoists of East Mountain. The four fellow Taoists of East Mountain waved their hands, and there were also faint green seal text syllables. Along with the fellow Taoists of East Mountain's arms, the four green lights rushed to the center of the formation diagram. Peng! With an earth-shattering sound, the four green lights collided and instantly turned into countless dots of fluorescent light. The fluorescent light fell like raindrops and sprinkled over the entire array diagram. The green seal text and the dots of ink that had appeared before merged into the fluorescent light and fell with it. Thus, the entire formation diagram slowly fell, and gradually merged with the formation that had been set up before. Go! The four fellow Taoists of East Mountain shouted at the same time, and their 8 hands rubbed together. Large amounts of spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered together, and as the seals were cast, they scattered over the formation diagram. Rumble! The earth shook, and the entire ground shook. Endless dust rose into the sky, covering half of the sky within 100 miles. As the dust gradually settled, the jade-green brilliance and the pitch-black ink spots gradually disappeared. The entire array diagram had completely disappeared. Phew! The four fellow Taoists of East Mountain let out a sigh of relief at the same time, and then they raised their heads to the sky and laughed. Ha ha ha. Then, the four figures rushed to the center of the formation, and gradually merged into one person. The fellow Daoist of East Mountain, who had just turned into one person, swayed slightly, as if he had used up too much of his magic power. Me. Fellow Daoist of East Mountain snorted coldly, and his figure flickered, like a ripple, and disappeared in midair. The entire night sky returned to its deathly stillness. Apart from the wind, there was only darkness. The moon had just risen, and the moonlight scattered down, dispelling the darkness. However, the hills within 100 miles were no different from the other hills. Even if one scanned it with their divine sense or looked with their naked eyes, they would absolutely not be able to find any clues. The hills in the north of the country of Xi regained its peace, which had not been there for several years. However, in the Meng Kingdom's Yun City, the Zhong family's Zhongling mountain villa could not calm down. Ah! A shocked cry rang out from a slope in the north of the villa. There were several rows of huts on this slope, and in front of the huts were patches of medicinal fields. In the darkness of the night, the spirit herbs shook their spirits, absorbing the moonlight and spiritual energy. What's going on? Who's making so much noise? Several patrolling disciples flying in midair heard the noise and flew over. Senior brother, senior brother. An anxious voice rang out, and a young disciple broke through the door of one of the huts. He almost rolled on the ground as he cried out, "Dead, dead, what are you shouting for?" One of the patrolling disciples scolded, "What dead? They're all dead, all dead." The young disciple pointed his finger incoherently, and said with extreme fear, When the other disciples heard this, they frowned. The disciple at the front patted his hand warily, and took out a yellow talisman. He said in a low voice, "Calm down, we've already passed by. You should explain the situation clearly." At this moment, the lights in the surrounding huts lit up. Several disciples had already poked their heads out of the huts, wanting to see what was going on. "All of you stay in the huts." Don't make a sound. The patrolling disciples shouted loudly, preventing everyone from coming out. Huff, huff, huff. The disciple who had screamed took a few deep breaths, and the horror on his face had not disappeared. He whispered incoherently, "The people in my hut are all dead." "What? All dead? There were 5 people in your hut." The patrolling disciple was shocked and turned to look at the hut. "Yes, 4 living senior brothers are all dead." The disciple came back to his senses and said in horror, "I was talking to them just now. Because I didn't eat well last night, I had a stomachache. When I returned to the hut, the 4 brothers in the hut were all dead. And they died in an extremely horrible way." The patrolling disciple took a deep breath and looked at the hut in front of him. His mood was very complicated. Obviously, this disciple had said something that he had never encountered in the past 10 years of patrolling. Immediately, the patrolling disciple did not dare to be negligent. He ordered another disciple to go back and inform the others. He then activated the yellow talisman in his hand and walked steadily towards the hut where the light was coming from. With a sound of the door, the patrolling disciple pushed open the door that he had closed and looked around. He saw that it was a hut about 5 feet wide. 5 heatable beds were placed in the 4 corners of the hut, and a bin oil lamp swayed on the table in front of the window. The flickering shadow moved in the hut, and in the light and shadow, the corpses of 4 young disciples with ashen faces were reflected in the eyes of the patrolling disciple. Although the patrolling disciple had made some preparations, he still could not help but exclaim softly when he saw the horrified and distorted faces of the 4 disciples. The hands of the 4 disciples were stretched out, as if they were trying to grab something. Their fingers were slightly curled, and their nails were black and tight. The eyes of the 4 disciples were staring straight at the door. Their eyes were wide open and filled with disbelief, as if they had seen something terrifying. Their lips were already dripping with blood, obviously bitten by the disciples' teeth. -8. Chapter 2107. The 4 disciples who had died tragically were looking at the door. The disciples on duty who had just stepped into the room saw the 8 dead fishes' eyes and their hair stood on end. Fear rose from the bottom of their heart. The disciple on duty was afraid, but he didn't dare to be negligent. He first scanned the entire room, and when he didn't find anything unusual, he walked to the disciple closest to the door. After a brief inspection, he frowned slightly, because he didn't see any injuries on the disciple's body. "How is it?" At this moment, a deep voice sounded. "Did you find any clues?" "Captain Zhongyu." The disciple on duty showed a relaxed expression and hurriedly turned around and bowed. A middle-aged cultivator in his 40s with thick eyebrows and big eyes steadily stepped into the room. This cultivator's cultivation was around the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Zhongyu raised his hand and motioned for the disciples on duty to stand up. He asked, "Did you find anything unusual?" "No." The disciple on duty shook his head slightly. This subordinate did a rough check and found that they might have been poisoned to death. "But I didn't find any injuries." This subordinate can't say for sure. "Did anything happen tonight?" "No, it was the same as before. There was no movement at all." Hearing this, Zhongyu's frown deepened. He had been the captain of the Zhongling mountain villa for decades, but this was the first time he had encountered such a strange thing. It was also the first time he had encountered so many low-level disciples dying at once. "Let the coroner come and take a closer look." Zhongyu turned around and ordered. One of the disciples on duty quickly walked away. Zhongyu looked around the room again and asked, "Tell me the details of the situation." "Yes, Captain." The disciple on duty pointed outside and said in a low voice, "There is still a surviving disciple outside. This subordinate will let him speak." Let him in." Zhongyu nodded, but the disciple on duty had just taken 2 steps when Zhongyu shouted again, "No need, this old man will go and ask him myself." "Yes." By the time Zhongyu arrived in front of the surviving disciple, he had already recovered some of his spirit, but his eyes were still a little dazed. Zhongyu looked at this disciple and muttered in his heart. He knew that although there were some disciples of the Zhong clan amongst these disciples, Most of them were disciples of other surnames that were related to the Zhong clan. There were even some villagers with some natural endowments near Zhongling Mountain Villa. Their aptitudes weren't too good, but they could still cultivate. Most of them were around the third layer of qi refining. Because they couldn't advance any further, they were assigned to the medicinal garden. Although these disciples would receive guidance from the Zhong family's disciples on their cultivation, their true purpose was to plant spirit herbs and do some chores in the Zhongling Mountain Villa. Although their status was higher than that of ordinary servants, they would never be noticed by others. Therefore, they would not be involved in anything that targeted the Zhong family. Tell this old man the ins and outs of the matter in detail. Zhong Yu looked at the disciple with clear eyes. Yes. The disciple licked his dry lips and repeated the story. This time, it was clearly more detailed than before, and his tone was much calmer. However, the matter was simple to begin with. No matter how detailed it was impossible to loosen Zhong Yu's brows. You're saying that you only went out for a short moment, and when you returned, the four of them were all dead. You didn't see anything out of the ordinary? Zhong Yu asked. Yes, this disciple really didn't. The disciple was about to blurt out when he suddenly thought of something. He hesitated and said, No, this disciple seems to have seen a black shadow. It was faster than a bird, but I couldn't see it clearly at night. This disciple doesn't know if this disciple saw wrongly. Oh, a black shadow. How big was it? Where did it fly to? Zhong Yu's face lit up with joy. The disciple stretched out his hand and gestured to the size of his palm. However, he seemed to feel that something was wrong, so he enlarged his hand again. Then, he felt that something was wrong again, so he enlarged his hand again. When he reached the size of a foot, he hesitated and said, This big. This disciple was really sleepy and didn't see it clearly. Where did the black shadow fly to? It seemed to be over there. The disciple was still hesitant and pointed uncertainly at another row of small houses. This is bad. When Zhong Yu saw the disciple pointing at another house, his heart immediately sank. He said anxiously, Zhong Huan, quickly go and gather all the disciples in the herb garden. Captain, it's already late at night. The disciple on duty whispered. Don't gather all the disciples. However, at this point, the disciple named Zhong Huan seemed to have realized something and exclaimed, Captain, could it be, only now did you remember? How dare you rely on this old man's usual guidance? Zhong Yu snorted coldly. Yes. Zhong Huan hurriedly waved his hand and asked the disciples on duty to wake up all the disciples who were resting in the herb garden and gather them. After a while, Zhong Huan walked over with a slightly dark face. How is it? Zhong Yu asked indifferently when he saw Zhong Huan's expression. Captain, you know that the disciples in 3 houses are all dead, Zhong Huan said in a low voice. They died in the same way as these 4. This subordinate also took a rough look and didn't find anything unusual. 15 disciples. Zhong Yu's expression changed drastically. Yes, 15 disciples. Including these 4, there are 19 disciples. Zhong Huan nodded slightly. At this moment, a loud sound rang out in the air above the Zhongling Mountain Villa in the distance. It was as if millions of firecrackers had been lit up one after another. Following the sound, clusters of brilliance flashed in the night sky. Who touched the mountain villa's restriction? Zhong Yu was shocked. He didn't have time to ask his subordinate about the situation and activated the flying talisman to rush into the air. However, just as he flew up, he heard an extremely angry voice like rolling thunder. Where did this evil creature come from? How dare you break into my Zhong family's ancestral hall? Then, another burst of dazzling fire appeared, and a thunderous sound was heard. Ah! Third granduncle's magic weapon? Zhong Yu was shocked and his body paused in midair. He knew that Zhong Peiyuan's cultivation was in the late stage of foundation establishment. With him attacking, how could he stand by the side? Even if he went, he would only die. Ha 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 tilde old Zhong, of course it's me. Xiao Hua's slightly exaggerated voice sounded at the same time. Then, Zhong Yu saw a golden light flash in front of his eyes. The golden light was so bright and sharp that it almost blinded his eyes. He couldn't help but close his eyes. Slash tilde tilde a sound was heard. It was unpleasant to the ear, as if silk was being cut. Then, he heard Zhong Peiyuan's angry roar. Xiao Hua, you are really bold. -8. Chapter 2108. This young master said that if you make this young master angry, this young master will kill everyone in your Zhong family one by one. If you want this young master to calm down. Xiao Hua's voice suddenly came closer. Zhong Yu was shocked and hurriedly landed. From which tilde the spiritual energy of heaven and earth surged, and then condensed together with that cold snort. He. A sneer flew over Zhong Yu's head. It was so fast that Zhong Yu had just opened his eyes and couldn't see it clearly. Ayo, this. Zhong Yu was somewhat enlightened. Isn't this the black shadow that disciple mentioned just now? Moreover, didn't this black shadow say that he would kill everyone in the Zhong family one by one? Could it be? This is the Xiao Hua that spread throughout the Zhong family a few days ago. Zhong Yu didn't have time to turn around and ask the surviving disciple when he saw two figures chasing after Xiao Hua. Even in Zhong Yu's eyes, the speed of these two people was much slower than Xiao Hua's. Patriarch. Third granduncle. Zhong Yu moaned sorrowfully. How could he investigate a person who could make a late-stage foundation establishment and an early-stage golden core cultivator join hands to chase after him? Finished thinking, Zhong Yu swallowed his saliva and turned to ask the surviving disciple, "Did you see that black shadow just now? Was it the one you saw just now?" I saw it." The fear on the disciple's face hadn't disappeared, and his fingers were trembling. "Yes, it looked like it. But what?" Zhong Yu asked anxiously. "But it didn't look as fast as just now," the surviving disciple said with some hesitation. "Of course, just now he was killing someone, and now he's running for his life. Of course it's a lot faster," Zhong Yu said without hesitation. "Look at that figure, is it the same? It's this size, it's this size." The surviving disciple raised his hands, and the gap between his hands was a bit wider. After about half a cup of tea's time, two figures flew over from a distance. Zhong Tianyao voice also came over in a low voice. "Old Third, how's your magic weapon?" This old man seems to have seen it being injured by that guy's magic weapon. Zhong Peiyuan's voice was somewhat distressed. "Good, Patriarch knows that Guy Xiao Hua's magic weapon is extremely powerful. Boy's magic weapon wasn't his match, and it was broken just now. If the boy wants to repair it, I'm afraid it will take a long time. Damn it. Xiao Hua, this bastard." Zhong Tianyao's voice was also angry. This bastard's cultivation is indeed not bad. Jing Er's message is also not a false report. Relying on this magic treasure, he can resist a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator with a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivation. Moreover, his thunder-controlling sex disciples are proficient in flying techniques, and this brat's technique, even this old man can't catch up. If he goes against my Zhong family, it will be really troublesome. The most hateful thing is that Xiao Hua was actually able to touch the ancestral hall and break through several defensive array formations. If not for the last array formation, wouldn't he have entered the ancestral hall? Zhong Peiyuan also felt some lingering fear at this time. Since I've already fallen out with Xiao Hua, I have to be tough to the end. Zhong Tianyao sneered. Even if we have to reconcile in the end, we have to let him know that this is Meng country, and he's just a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator. My Zhong family isn't a place where he can behave atrociously. You still want to kill my Zhong family's disciples one by one. Give him more guts. Give him 10 times his cultivation. Zhong Peiyuan said angrily. "Hey, who is this?" As Zhong Tianyao spoke, he saw a figure in front of him flying over in a somewhat cowering manner. "Oh, it's my Zhongling Mountain Villa's disciple on duty." Zhong Peiyuan seemed to have some impression of Zhong Yu. He raised his voice and said, "Zhong Yu, go back to your duty. This is not a place where you can meddle." "Yes, disciple understands." Zhong Yu bowed and said, "However, disciple has something to ask third granduncle to go over and take a look." "Oh, What matter do you need this old man to go over? Zhong Peiyuan was stunned for a moment. His divine sense swept towards Zhong Yu's back and those low-level disciples gathered together. Ah! This is... Zhong Peiyuan was stunned. His face also changed greatly as he turned his head to look at Zhong Tianyao. Patriarch. Ian, this old man has already seen it. Zhong Tianyao's face had never been as gloomy as this 2 times. His eyes flashed as he stared at Zhong Yu. You said that this was done by that bastard Xiao Hua? Zhong Yu trembled. Zhong Tianyao's gaze was really too sharp. He hurriedly bowed and said, yes, Patriarch knows. This subordinate has already asked the surviving disciple. Although I'm not completely sure. However, that figure, that speed, and the time when the disciple was killed. Also, that bastard's arrogant words. When Xiao Hua's arrogant words were mentioned, Zhong Tianyao was so angry that he flung his sleeves and said, Old Third, you take a look. Was it done by Xiao Hua? If that's the case, you send out disciples. Ian, you and second brother personally go out and see where that bastard is hiding. Even if you can't find him, you have to find that female disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sec. This old man wants to see who is more powerful in my Meng country and my Zhongling mountain villa. Yes, disciple understands. Zhong Peiyuan hurriedly bowed and saluted. At this moment, Zhong Peifu and the others also rushed over. Zhong Tianyao didn't even look at them and coldly left. Third brother, what's going on? Zhong Peifu naturally also saw the abnormality in the medicinal garden. He secretly glanced at Zhong Tianyao's back and asked. Zhong Peiyuan rolled his eyes a few times and ordered, call Zhong Yejing over. This old man has something to ask her. A disciple on duty complied and activated a flying talisman and left. Zhong Peiyuan transmitted a few words to Zhong Peifu. Zhong Peifu's face showed anger and his figure descended. He and Zhong Peiyuan looked around and asked the coroner, the surviving disciple, and the disciple on duty a few questions. Other than knowing that the 19 disciples died from poison, they didn't find any other clues. Third great uncle. Zhong Yejing quickly flew over. Obviously, she had already asked the disciple on duty on the way. When she saw the tragic deaths of the disciples, she couldn't help but feel a little sad. Look at what you've done, Zhong Peiyuan said without any trace of politeness. If you didn't bring Xiao Hua here, how could my Zhong family lose so many people? These low-level disciples are also my Zhong family's disciples. Third great uncle knows. Zhong Yejing frowned and said, Junior feels that this is definitely not Xiao Hua's doing. If it wasn't him, then who could it be? He just admitted it. Zhong Peifu sneered. Third great uncle knows. Zhong Yejing shook her head. Xiao Hua did it for the 2 gold sheets. He probably went to the ancestral hall because he heard the news that Junior occasionally revealed. As for the words he said, they should be words of anger, because in the 10 days that Junior traveled with him, his compassion for the state of the universe and the fate of mankind, as well as the realm where he places the lives of ordinary people in his eyes, is far from what we cultivators can compare to. How could such a benevolent cultivator casually kill people? The realm where he placed the lives of ordinary people in his eyes? Zhong Peiyuan asked curiously, what do you mean? Zhong Yejing didn't hesitate to tell him what Xiao Hua did, and finally said, Third great uncle, what kind of cultivator would do such a thing? Junior knows that I can't do it. TSK, a person fishing for fame. Without waiting for Zhong Peiyuan to answer, Zhong Peifu mocked, a group of ordinary people, ant-like existences, how could a cultivator care about them? That Xiao Hua only told you about it and went by himself. You didn't follow him, so what did you do? Second great uncle, Junior's divine sense has seen it before. Zhong Yejing retorted. H, I reckon it was for you to see. Zhong Peifu said without any trace of politeness, before he came here, he was already plotting against my Zhong family. He wanted to use such an illusion to confuse you so that he could obtain my Zhong family's gold leaf. Second great uncle. Zhong Yejing said anxiously, if you don't believe me, you can send someone to investigate. Xiao Hua hasn't shown up for more than 10 days, so he must be helping those ordinary people around my Zhongling mountain villa. Ph, why should I care about this when I have nothing better to do? Zhong Peifu said again, Patriarch has already ordered me to capture the other disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I don't have time. Besides, Jing you're a disciple of the Zhong family. How can you help an outsider? Second great uncle. Zhong Yejing said anxiously, Boy is afraid that second great uncle will only pay attention to Xiao Hua and let the real culprit go, harming the lives of my Zhong family's disciple. You can go now. Without waiting for Zhong Yejing to say anything, Zhong Peiyuan waved his hand and said, Gather all the disciples in the Zhongling Mountain Villa who are at the foundation establishment stage and above. Those who are in closed-door cultivation should also come out. Before Xiao Hua is captured, be on high alert. Don't let anything go wrong. Yes, boy understands. Zhong Yejing nodded sadly and flew away. Zhong Peifu and Zhong Peiyuan checked for a while, but they couldn't find anything. They gave a few instructions to the disciples on duty and went back. Although the disciples in the herb garden had dispersed, everyone was anxious. A terrifying atmosphere spread throughout the herb garden, so much so that the entire Zhongling Mountain Villa began to tense up. Fortunately, after more than 10 days, there were no more movements from Xiao Hua, and there were no abnormalities. Even the disciples of the Zhong family who went out to look for Xiao Hua and Xue came up empty-handed. It seemed that Xiao Hua and Xue had already left Yun City and went somewhere else. Therefore, the tense hearts of the people in the Zhongling Mountain Villa began to gradually relax. Then, it was another moonless night. The Zhongling Mountain Villa was shrouded in darkness. Occasionally, a few lights came from a few small houses, making the villa look even more desolate. Help! Suddenly, a mournful cry for help sounded from the south of the villa, and this cry for help came to an abrupt end, and there was no more sound. Let's go. Zhong Yu, who was on duty and had his attention on the herb garden, heard the voice and immediately said in shock, This is the place where the family members live. How could this guy rush into the inner residence? Yes, Xiao Hua was a foundation establishment cultivator. How could he go to the inner residence of the Zhong family to harass the family members? However, a strange thing happened again. Zhong Yu had just flown for a few breaths with the disciples on duty when there was a rumbling sound of magic tools colliding with each other in the southwest of the Zhongling Mountain Villa. At the same time, Zhong Yu's familiar voice echoed arrogantly in the air above the Zhongling Mountain Villa. Ha ha ha, old Zhong, so your Zhongling Mountain Villa has a place to refine magic tools. You hid it so well, no wonder you were so confident in repairing your ancestral magic tools. If this young master hadn't stumbled upon it by accident, I wouldn't have been able to discover your Zhong family's secret. -8. Chapter 2109. Xiao Hua, you little bastard, you've gone too far. Zhong Peiyuan's voice naturally came over in a flustered and exasperated manner. Today, this young master has already enjoyed himself to the fullest. This is just a small punishment for your Zhong family. As Xiao Hua spoke, he whistled and flew away from the side of Zhongling Mountain Villa. How did the patriarch provoke this god of plague? Zhong Yu's heart was itching with hatred for Xiao Hua. For the past month, he had been patrolling every night for fear that something might go wrong. However, in the end, a disaster still happened today. As for Xiao Hua, he had gone to the west side of Yun City in the past 10 days and had seen everything within a radius of several hundred miles. He had also sent out a lot of fine seeds from his space and was very satisfied. Today, he just happened to pass by Zhongling Mountain Villa and used the Earth Escape technique to come to the Ancestral Hall to take a look. As a result, the Ancestral Hall's defense was very tight and even had Zhong Tianyaro personally overseeing it. Xiao Hua knew that the Zhong family's Ancestral Hall was definitely hiding something other than the gold leaf. Thus, Xiao Hua looked elsewhere with interest, wanting to do something that would make Zhong Tianyaro feel disgusted. However, the entire Zhongling Mountain Villa's defense was very tight and there seemed to be disciples patrolling everywhere. Xiao Hua was also unwilling to make things difficult for these low-level disciples and thus headed towards the southwest direction. This southwest direction seemed to have few traces of people and the defense was also very loose. However, when Xiao Hua looked carefully, he actually found that there was an extremely powerful restriction underground. When Xiao Hua broke through the restriction and entered, he actually found that it was an extremely complete place for refining tools and Zhong Peiyuan was actually inside. Damn it, I just casually copied some of their refining materials. This can't be considered a lesson. Xiao Hua was somewhat dissatisfied. This Zhong Peiyuan has learned to be careful now. If he doesn't release his magic treasure, this young master's soaring dragon shears can't ruthlessly cut them a few times. It seems that Zhongling Mountain Villa is also somewhat troublesome. There are actually people screaming. This time, this old fool Zhong will be somewhat troublesome. Ha ha ha. However, speaking of which, with this soaring dragon shears, it seems to be more powerful than the flying swords in the past. No wonder my Dao sex cultivators, although they envy sword cultivators, if you really want them to nurture a sword, they won't really do it. Once this magic treasure reaches a certain level, it's indeed powerful. Xiao Hua flew as he pondered. However, Reverend Brightsword's Dao Heart Sword Seed technique seems to be feasible. Although Dream has yet to awaken, this young master has already sensed the vigorous vitality within it. And a special feeling within the flying sword. I really don't know if the Dream Executor or the Soaring Dragon Scissors will be more powerful. Oh, what is that? Xiao Hua suddenly furrowed his brows. His divine sense swept towards the area behind him. However, when his divine sense swept out, he only saw a palm-sized black shadow flash before it suddenly disappeared. When he looked carefully, there was no trace of it at all. Strange. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. He stopped and flew back. After checking again, he still didn't find anything strange. He smacked his lips and flew up again. When he flew far away, on top of a rock under Xiao Hua, something that looked exactly like a rock moved. However, as soon as this rock left the rock, it immediately turned pitch black and flew in another direction like an arrow from a bow. Husband, why are you smiling so lewdly? Shue opened her eyes and looked at Xiao Hua's lecherous smile. She unconsciously covered her mouth and laughed. Did you peek at some girl coming out of the bath? Or did you see some fairies' spring scenery? Xiao Hua raised his head and flung his seemingly elegant hair to the side. Is your husband that tasteless? Oh, that's... Shue's eyes lit up. Could it be that husband got the gold leaf from the Zhong family? Speaking of the gold leaf, Xiao Hua was like a deflated balloon. He sighed and said, Ari, how could that be? That old fool Zhong is very cautious. I reckon he already has the gold leaf with him. If husband wants it, I can't exchange it. Then I can only capture Zhong Tianyao. Capture a golden core cultivator? Shue shook her head and said very sympathetically, I'm afraid husband still has to cultivate for another 100 years. Xiao Hua knew that he had the chance to kill Zhong Tianyao, but to capture him, it wouldn't be easy. But if he killed a golden core cultivator for 2 gold leaf, Xiao Hua asked himself if he could do it for the time being. Then what are you so happy about? Shue asked. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hua heard and couldn't help but laugh. He told her about the 2 times he harassed Zhongling Mountain Villa and explained, since husband can't get the gold leaf, then I'll keep harassing them and make them annoyed. In the worst case, they'll have no choice but to come find husband. Anyway, the gold leaf is useless to them. They should be happy to get rid of husband's harassment. Hehe, that's a good idea. Shue pursed her lips and laughed. She seemed to have the same childlike innocence as Xiao Hua. After laughing, Shue said, actually, the Zhong clan is also overcompensating. From what they said, it seems that there's been some unforeseen event, so they don't want to exchange with husband. Wife is indeed smart. Xiao Hua praised. Before husband went to harass them for the first time, I've already investigated clearly. It turns out that before I arrived at Zhongling Mountain Villa, a golden core cultivator from Changbai sect visited Zhong Tianyao. As for what happened, husband couldn't find out. It seems that only Zhong Tianyao, Zhong Peiyuan, and a few others know. But from Zhong Tianyao's tone that day, it seems that he was threatened by this golden core cultivator. Moreover, it's very likely that the material he needed to repair his artifact was taken away by force. Otherwise, He wouldn't have left Chen more dense stone behind. My husband is right. Xue Xue nodded. If husband knows what material Zhong Tianyao is lacking, if husband has it, you can take it out and exchange with him. Wife's words are reasonable. Xiao Hua disagreed. Although the gold leaf is important, if Zhong Tianyao asks for too much, husband doesn't want to be a sucker. In the end, it really won't work. At this point, a trace of ruthlessness appeared in Xiao Hua's eyes. After all, this gold leaf is related to a Buddhist cultivation method. Xiao Hua must get it. Zhong Tianyao's attitude really made him angry. Ian, husband, let's try again. If it really doesn't work, then we'll make a move. Xue Xue, who was used to Xiao Yu continence methods, didn't think much of it. She was only worried that Xiao Hua couldn't defeat Zhong Tianyao. Husband knows. Xiao Hua smiled. Right, how's wife's cultivation? He, with husband in front, how bad can this concubine be? Xue Xue covered her mouth and said, I'm already familiar with the cultivation method. These few days, I'm expanding my meridians. If there's no accident, I should be able to meet the needs of foundation establishment within a year. Great. Xiao Hua clapped and smiled. He hugged Xue Xue gently and sweetly. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chijian. Come to vote. -8. Chapter 2110. Not to mention the warmth of Xiao Hua and Xue Xue, within the Zhongling mountain villa, the south side of the womenfolk was already in chaos. Zhong Peiyuan was standing in front of an embroidery building, his face was flickering with uncertainty. Around him, there were many crying sounds. In front of him stood Zhong Yu and Zhong Yejing, who had just walked over. Jing'er tilde Zhong Peiyuan opened his mouth, his tone seemed to be a little hesitant. He was actually afraid to hear Zhong Yejing's answer. Third granduncle. Zhong Yejing's face was also extremely ugly. She whispered, Jing'er has already checked one by one. There are 34 womenfolk dead. What? This many? Zhong Yu's face turned green. Yes. Zhong Yejing said with a bitter face, among them were dying children and female cultivators at the 12th level of Qi refinement. The way they died is the same as the tragic death of the nursery disciples a month ago. That damn Xiao Hua. Zhong Peiyuan gritted his teeth and said, he's obviously a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Where did he get such a ruthless and insidious method? He didn't even let go of a dying child. How can such behavior be worthy of the name of a famous sect? Third granduncle. In this boy's opinion, we need Meng Country's Taiqing sect, Changbai sect, and other cultivation sects to be witnesses and let them make the decision for our Zhong family. Zhong Yu thought for a moment and whispered, after all, our Zhong family can't compare with the Imperial Thunder sect. It would be fine if she didn't mention Changbai sect, but when she heard Changbai sect, Zhong Peiyuan became angry and said fiercely, your fist is still harder than your own. If you want others to support you, you have to take out spirit stones. This. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan angry, Zhong Yu immediately realized something and hurriedly lowered her head. What else do you have to say? Zhong Peiyuan had nowhere to vent his anger, so he scolded Zhong Yejing. The first time can be said to be a coincidence, but what about the second time? Are you going to say that Xiao Hua is innocent? These 34 womenfolk's lives, was it someone else who took it? If it's not Xiao Hua, then tell me, who is it? Zhong Yejing was speechless. She wanted to argue, but she really didn't know what to say. After all, one may know a person's face but not his heart. She and Xiao Hua had only met once. Seeing that Zhong Yejing was silent, Zhong Peiyuan continued, you have committed a grave sin by bringing this devil to my Zhong family. In my opinion, you'll surely be heavily punished. But it's precisely because we need people now, so I'll give you a way out and allow you to redeem yourself through meritorious service. Once Xiao Hua is killed, you can enter into closed-door cultivation in the orchid of the Bell's courtyard to reflect on your mistakes. Yes, boy understands. Zhong Yejing bowed. At that moment, a young disciple of the 4th level of Qi refining hurriedly flew over. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan throwing a tantrum, he hastily landed on the ground and cowered, not daring to approach. What's the matter? Zhong Peiyuan looked at the disciple and scolded. Bad news. Bad news. That disciple shouted in an exaggerated manner. What's the big deal? Zhong Peiyuan reprimanded. Haven't you seen the world yet? Yes, yes. The disciple didn't know how to respond to Zhong Peiyuan's reprimand. What's the matter? Zhong Yu knew that this was his disciple on duty, so he scolded in a low voice, if you have something to say it quickly. I'll let the old ancestor know. The disciple hurriedly said, several medicinal fields in the herb garden have been dug up, not even the roots are left. That's it. Zhong Peiyuan said angrily, do you still need to report this? He knew that the spirit herbs in the herb garden were common, not rare, and the spirit herbs in several medicinal fields were not worth many spirit stones. Yes, this disciple understands. The disciple nodded and hurriedly turned around. After the disciple left, Zhong Yejing was about to speak, but Zhong Peiyuan frowned and his expression tensed up. He stood there respectfully, and after a while, he bowed again and transmitted a few words. It seemed that Zhong Tianyaro had something to tell him. After Zhong Peiyuan finished transmitting his voice, he turned to Zhong Yejing and said, Jing go and call Zhong Dong over. The two of you go to the Zhongling Hall and wait for the patriarch's orders. Yes, Jing understands. Zhong Yejing hurriedly bowed and accepted the order. However, she was still a little surprised. Although Zhong Yedong's name was similar to hers, and he was also a direct descendant of the Zhong clan, he was her cousin. He was only born a little earlier than her, but their parents gave him a similar name. However, as his name suggested, Zhong Yedong's temper was quite irritable, which was the complete opposite of Zhong Yejing's gentle and quiet personality. After Zhong Yejing left, Zhong Peiyuan did not even look at her. He ordered Zhong Yu to send more people to pay attention to the movements in the village, and flew away himself. Seeing Zhong Peiyuan fly away, the tension in Zhong Yu's heart loosened a little. In fact, there were still some things that he didn't dare to say to Zhong Peiyuan face to face. Over the past month, because of the inexplicable deaths of the disciples in the medicinal garden, the hearts of the people in the manor had already wavered. Many of the tenant farmers who worked in the manor had quietly left, and even more people found excuses to not come over. Many of the chores in the manor were temporarily done by the disciples with cultivation. However, these things were managed by the housekeeper. Even if the housekeeper did not say anything, Zhong Yu had to consider whether it was appropriate for him to say it. The south side of the Zhongling mountain village was brightly lit, and cries of sorrow could be heard everywhere. After all, 34 lives were lost, and many relatives were involved. This night was destined to not be peaceful. However, unlike the chaos in the Zhongling mountain village, about 10 miles away from the Zhongling mountain village, a large number of willow trees surrounded a small lake. The lake water rippled in the night wind, and the willow branches danced on the shore like ghosts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. On the shore, there was a small courtyard. At this moment, it was boundlessly quiet, and there was not the slightest movement. Wu tilde tilde the night wind grew stronger, and it actually blew a sound. Pi li pa la it was unknown which room's window was blown open, but then there was the sound of a window being closed. It seemed that the owner of the room was sitting by the window. Zhong Haoran tilde a clear, somewhat helpless, and somewhat agitated voice sounded, I don't want you to pity me here, I'd rather live like this. Hurry up and leave, don't bother me here. It's been more than a month, and you've been nagging in my ears during the day and guarding my window at night. You're more annoying than a woman with a loose tongue. This voice was actually Zhong Xiuhan's. Senior sister, you should listen to me. Zhong Haoran's lukewarm voice sounded at the same time, as long as you nod your head, I'll go and beg Marshal Aunt Yi Jing, beg her to come here, and let her bring you to find Xiao Hua. You also know how good the quality of the medicinal pill he gave you last time was. He's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, and now he's at Foundation establishment. Even Marshal Aunt Yi Jing is extremely respectful to him, so it can be seen how deep his cultivation is. I'm sure he has even better medicinal pills on him, and will definitely be able to heal your injuries. Zhong Haoran, you dare to mention my injuries to Xiao Hua. Zhong Xiuhan was flustered and exasperated. Back then, he was at Qi Refinement, and I was also at Qi Refinement. Now that he's at Foundation establishment, what about me? How can I even talk about cultivation now? You're showing off my pity in front of him for no reason. Is it because I'm not pitiful enough? Do you want me to lose face in front of Xiao Hua? In front of the Imperial Thunder Sect? In the country of Shi? It's not that serious. Zhong Haoran still said gently, I think Xiao Hua is pretty good. Last time, he gave us the medicinal pill without a second word. This time, if he can help, he will definitely help. Zhong Haoran. You stupid pig head. Zhong Xiuhan scolded again. Do you know my current situation? Do you know what great-grandfather said? Do you know that I'm... At this point, Zhong Xiuhan seemed to have lost all the strength in her body. She collapsed on the floor in the room, sobbing softly. Senior apprentice sister, senior apprentice sister. Outside the room, Zhong Haoran panicked and shouted, Don't cry, don't cry. If you're annoying me, I'll leave right now, please don't cry. Zhong Haoran, you stupid pig head. Zhong Xiuhan cried as she said, If you dare to take a step out of this orchid of the valley, see if I don't ever see you again, not even a word about you. Yes, yes. Zhong Haoran immediately said, I'll stand right here, not even a step away, not even a step away. At the end of his sentence, Zhong Haoran hesitated again, but... Senior apprentice sister, you're so annoying. You're already crying. If I don't leave, you're still crying. What should I do? Fart. Zhong Xiuhan was so angry that she laughed and scolded, You stupid person, when did I say I was annoying you? Didn't you just ask me to leave? Zhong Haoran scratched his head and asked curiously. That was just then, this is now. Zhong Xiuhan said. Okay, yes, I know. Zhong Haoran nodded like a chick pecking at rice. After a while, Zhong Xiuhan's crying gradually subsided. She said softly, Haoran, you've been in the orchid of the valley for more than a month, and you've been delaying your cultivation. Moreover, it's hard to explain to the clan. You'd better leave quickly. Senior apprentice sister, are you talking to me? Zhong Haoran was obviously not used to the name Haoran, and said nervously. Of course, if not you, who else? Zhong Xiuhan said anxiously. Everyone in the orchid of the valley is resting. Who else can I call? Yes. Zhong Haoran panicked again. You don't have to rush back. Your matter is more important than anything else. As long as you can recover, I won't be afraid even if I don't cultivate in the future, even if the clan leader banishes me to the orchid of the valley to reflect on my mistake. Bah, you wish. Zhong Xiuhan knew that Zhong Haoran had no other thoughts, but when she heard those words, her heart was filled with sweetness. It was far more sincere than I'll accompany you to the ends of the world, to the ends of the earth. Yes. Zhong Haoran did not understand what he had said wrong, and quickly nodded. Looking at Zhong Haoran's panicked expression, Zhong Yuhan was worried for a while. After listening for a while, she said, Haoran, there are many beautiful female cultivators in the Zhong family. You just need to hurry up and cultivate. Even if you don't reach the foundation establishment stage, there will be many women who want to marry you. Why do you have to be like this? -8. Chapter 21:11. Me. Zhong Haoran's scalp was about to explode when he heard Zhong Xiuhan mention a marriage alliance. He was almost incoherent. I don't want to marry someone else. I just want to see senior sister every day, that's enough. Sigh. Zhong Xiuhan knew that it was impossible to get any sweet words out of Zhong Haoran's mouth. This sentence was the limit of what Zhong Haoran could say. Haoran, do you know that I've become a cripple now? Zhong Xiuhan clenched her teeth, and tears were about to fall. I know. Zhong Haoran immediately said. I know that senior sister couldn't reach foundation establishment that day and forcefully took the second foundation establishment pill. Because your meridians couldn't hold more true qi, they exploded. If your meridians can't be repaired, you won't be able to cultivate in the future. You'll be the same as a mortal. Damn Haoran, can't you be more tactful? Zhong Xiuhan said angrily again. Just these words of yours will anger me to death. Yes, I won't say it. Zhong Haoran hurriedly replied. Sigh, since you know, you should know the pros and cons of this. Zhong Xiuhan said faintly. Even family head, a golden core cultivator, was helpless after seeing it. That Xiao Hua just reached foundation establishment. What can he do? Senior sister Tilda Zhong Haoran shook his head. You can't say that. Although Xiao Hua's cultivation isn't as high as family head's, but he's a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It's impossible that the Imperial Thunder Sect doesn't have a pill to repair meridians, right? Sigh, Haoran, my meridians aren't simply damaged. My entire body's meridians are broken. I heard that the Xiaoyu continent has the heaven mending pill. Only that thing can reconnect my meridians. However, that's a legendary item. Moreover, even if they have it, what can I use to exchange for it? Zhong Xiuhan sighed. Don't forget, you and I are just two insignificant disciples of the Zhong family. Now that I'm a cripple, other than you, other than the widows and widows of the Lily of the Valley, who else would think of me? Senior Martial Sister Tilda Zhong Haoran called out, don't be sad. We have to ask before we know, right? If Xiao Hua really has that heavenly mending pill, it has to have a price. Even if I don't have spirit stones now, wait until I reach foundation establishment, wait until I reach Jindan, I will definitely return this favor to Xiao Hua. Silly Haoran. Zhong Xiuhan sighed again. Just based on your simple words, how could Xiao Hua give you the pill? What do you mean? Zhong Haoran seemed to wake up. Does senior sister mean that you agree to look for Xiao Hua? Tempage, your legs and mouth are on your body, why are you asking me? Zhong Yuhan scolded. But, if you don't agree, I don't dare to go. Zhong Haoran was in a difficult position. What if I ask for the pill and you don't take it? I begged you for more than a month before you agreed. If I went without saying a word, wouldn't you be even angrier? Seeing your sincerity, I agree. Zhong Yuhan chuckled. That's great. Zhong Haoran was overjoyed, then smiled bitterly and said somewhat pitifully, Senior Martial Sister, can I take a step? Since you didn't let me move, I didn't dare to move at all. Now my feet are numb. You dead head. Zhong Yuhan said angrily, can't you secretly move? Yes, I will secretly move now. Zhong Haoran said immediately. Ari, it's been more than a month since you saw Xiao Hua. He has already left. Where are you going to find him? Zhong Yuhan waited until Zhong Haoran stamped his feet, then said, besides, how can Xiao Hua have the heavenly mending pill? Hearing Zhong Yuhan's words, Zhong Haoran comforted, even if Xiao Hua left, Martial Uncle Yi Jing definitely has his communication talisman. I will ask Martial Uncle Yi Jing to come over first. As for whether Xiao Hua has the heavenly mending pill or not, if he doesn't, Imperial Thunder Sect should have it, right? Haoran, you are too naive. Zhong Yuhan looked at Zhong Haoran with heartache. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the rays of light reflected on Zhong Haoran's extremely sincere face. The eyes on his face were so clear, and no words of praise could compare to a glance from his eyes. Zhong Yuhan couldn't help but feel sour in her heart. Why didn't she see it earlier? Or perhaps she shouldn't have been too reckless that day. If she didn't build her foundation, then so be it. If she could protect this sincere Zhong Haoran, it would be 100 times better than the current situation. Oh, it's daybreak again. Zhong Haoran looked at Zhong Yuhan's tearful face and said with a smile, Senior sister, wait for me. What are you going to do? Zhong Yuhan asked curiously, every morning, you will immediately come here for an hour. What are you going to do? This. Zhong Haoran hesitated and said, I won't hide anything from you, but this matter, you can't know about it for the time being. You dare. Zhong Yuhan said angrily, you were fine just now, why are you not listening to me now? Do you think I can ignore you just because I can ignore you? Senior sister Tilda Zhong Haoran's face was extremely red, and his eyes were wide open. He quickly waved his hand and said, Senior sister, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but, once I tell you, it won't work. You go, don't force me. Hearing Zhong Haoran's words, Zhong Yuhan's eyes reddened again. She lowered her head and said, Haoran, you go, I won't ask any more. You still want to talk to me? Zhong Haoran was a little troubled. Temph, if you want to go, go quickly. If you're too slow, I won't talk to you. Zhong Yuhan didn't forget to reprimand Zhong Haoran even though her eyes were red. Yes, yes. Zhong Haoran was overjoyed. He quickly walked out and activated the flying talisman. He flew over the small lake beside the orchid of the valley and flew towards the mountain closest to the lake. That mountain wasn't high, but it was the highest mountain in the area. Zhong Haoran flew for a while before he reached the peak. At this time, the sun had already risen and shone on the mountain peak. The biting cold wind on the mountain peak was somewhat warm. Zhong Haoran walked familiarly to a stone slab on the mountain peak. The stone slab was unusually clean, completely different from the dust on the rocks nearby. Zhong Haoran's eyes looked at the bright red sun in the east. He knelt on the stone slab and kowtowed 9 times in a row. He said very sincerely, "Heavens above, I, Zhong Haoran, am truly an insignificant cultivator. I, Zhong Haoran, am now prostrating myself before the heavens. With my incomparably humble heart, I beg the heavens once again. My senior sister's meridians have been destroyed and she can no longer cultivate. I, Zhong Haoran, am willing to exchange my meridians for her so that she can continue cultivating. I don't know if my words will reach the heavens, but I am willing to use my heart's sincerity to believe that the heavens will open their eyes and hear my prayers." -8. Chapter 21:12. If this request is too difficult, please give me the heaven mending pill, so that I can heal senior sister's meridians. If my request is not successful, I hope that Xiao Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect can bring the pill with him to help this kid. As long as senior sister can be happy, this kid is willing to break my bones. Although Zhong Haoran was very clumsy in front of Zhong Yuhan, he was extremely skilled in saying these words. If he hadn't been thinking for a long time, then as he said, he had been praying for dozens of days, or even hundreds of days. After praying, Zhong Haoran stood up and prepared to leave the stone slab. However, at this moment, his heart moved, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. He knelt down again and kowtowed 9 times. At this time, his forehead was already red. Zhong Haoran said, "This kid, Zhong Haoran, is here to worship senior Xiao Hua. If you are still in Meng country, please hear this kid's heartfelt words, please come back quickly. This kid, Zhong Haoran, is begging senior Xiao Hua. I hope that you have the heaven mending pill in your storage bag. Even if you don't have the heaven mending pill, the Imperial Thunder Sect also has the secret formula to repair the meridians of the whole body. I hope that the heavens can borrow senior Xiao Hua's hand to fulfill this little request of mine. If senior Xiao Hua can cure senior sister, this kid will definitely. Zhong Haoran said a few words, but he couldn't think of anything. After all, he also heard this method of praying from his grandmother. It was a helpless method when one's strength was exhausted. He was forced to kowtow and beg like this because he had no other choice. Moreover, when he saw Xiao Hua that day, he thought that Xiao Hua had kindly given them the pill before. That kind of desire, that kind of eagerness involuntarily grew. He was like a person who fell into the water and met a straw. He used all his strength to reach out and grab it, regardless of whether this straw could save him or not. He unilaterally believed that Xiao Hua could definitely bring about a turnaround for his senior sister. However, when he really wanted to make a promise to Xiao Hua, he couldn't find the right word. After all, Xiao Hua was not the heavens, and some words were not suitable. Zhong Haoran hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "If senior Xiao Hua Xiao is able to heal senior sister's meridians, then junior Zhong Haoran will definitely kowtow to senior Xiao Hua Xiao every morning and evening, kowtow to him for his great achievements, kowtow to him for his longevity." After saying all this, Zhong Haoran really couldn't think of anything else, so he stood up and went down the mountain. However, what no one expected was that in the distant cave, within the Buddha fire in Xiao Hua's Buddha heart that was cultivating with Shui, a fine mark suddenly appeared. That fine mark was extremely fine and faint, and even Xiao Hua's Buddha sense couldn't see it. At this time, Xiao Hua was meditating with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he sensed something and opened his eyes. He looked around strangely and thought, it seems like something happened. And, it seems to be in the direction of Zhongling Mountain Village? It must be that old man Zhong who is scheming against this young master. Xiao Hua sneered, this young master won't fall for it. However, when Xiao Hua closed his eyes again, he opened them again after a moment. He frowned and pondered, no, this feeling is different from the feeling of danger in the pass. It's an indescribable feeling. It seems to be coming from the Buddha Sarira, and not from the hands of karma in the space. Should I go or not? Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. After all, he had just disturbed Zhongling Mountain Village last night, and Zhong Tianyao was definitely furious there. If he went now, he would be fighting with his life on the line. Husband, what are you doing? Xue Xue was very sensitive and sensed it. This. Xiao Hua didn't know how to explain it to Xue Xue, and smiled apologetically, your husband's heart is a little uneasy, as if something happened at Zhongling Mountain Village. Ah! Sudden inspiration. Xue Xue was stunned, and said in astonishment, this seems to be a legendary great ability, right? What do you mean? Xiao Hua was also astonished. When I was young, I heard from my uncle that when the ancient almighty cultivators cultivated to a very high level, they would have a kind of magical ability to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. As long as there was something related to them, they would be able to do it on a whim. They could even pinch their fingers to know what it was and choose the most beneficial thing for them. That's right. That's right. Isn't this the hands of karma? Xiao Hua's eyes spun rapidly as he thought to himself. Husband, if you don't have a bad feeling, I suggest you go and take a look. Xue Xue suggested. Who knows, there might be something related to you there. Maybe it's the gold leaf that you're thinking about. Hey, not bad, you have a point. Xiao Hua thought about the gold leaf and the Buddha Sarira, and nodded. My wife, please cultivate in the formation. Your husband will be back soon. Xiao Hua left the cave, and changed his direction, and slowly flew toward Zhongling Mountain Village. However, after flying for a while, Xiao Hua gradually changed his direction. He was actually heading toward the peak of the orchid of the valley. Hey! Isn't this the brat called Zhong Haoren? Xiao Hua's divine sense was searching, and he saw Zhong Haoren, who was heading to Zhongling Mountain Village to look for Zhong Yejing. After thinking for a while, Xiao Hua returned to his original appearance and pretended not to know anything as he flew past Zhong Haoren. Xiao. Senior Xiao. I didn't see wrongly, right? Zhong Haoren's expression definitely shocked Xiao Hua. It was as if he saw an immortal descending from the heavens, and he was extremely surprised. Senior Xiao, you really heard this brat's prayer. You really can heal my senior sister's meridians. Zhong Haoren spoke incoherently, and he had completely lost his etiquette. He stepped forward and grabbed Xiao Hua's robe as he spoke. Xiao Hua was bewildered, and he frowned. Zhong Haoren, what do you mean by that? Can't you explain it clearly? Moreover, in the past month, weren't you at Zhongling Mountain Village? Didn't you hear the news at Zhongling Mountain Village? Zhong Haoren said excitedly, Senior Xiao, you don't know. Then, Zhong Haoren told Xiao Hua about how he prayed to the heavens and Xiao Hua, and he explained, when this brat saw Senior Xiao that day, he wanted to ask Senior Xiao for help. However, you also saw the situation that day. This brat didn't have a chance to speak, so this brat came from the village to Orchid of the Valley to discuss this matter with Senior Sister. Senior Sister didn't agree, so this brat went to the mountain peak to pray every day. Oh, where did you pray? Can you bring this Xiao to see it? Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. This was the first time he had heard of such a strange matter. Of course, Zhong Haoren was extremely surprised. Whatever Xiao Hua wanted him to do now, he would agree without hesitation. When the two of them arrived at the mountain peak, Xiao Hua looked at the stone slab that Zhong Haoren was kneeling on, and he fell into deep thought. His Buddhist heart should be here. In other words, he could actually sense the matter that Zhong Haoren prayed to him. This was something that he couldn't explain no matter how hard he racked his brains. Senior Xiao. Zhong Haoren waited for a long time, and without the slightest bit of impatience, he said in a low voice, Senior, Do you have any other questions? Xiao Hua shook his head blankly and said with a bitter smile, this Xiao wants to ask, but I don't know where to start. Then, does Senior Xiao have the heaven-mending pill in his storage bag? Zhong Haoran suddenly felt that his mouth was a little dry. Heaven-mending pill? Xiao Hua smiled and shook his head. This Xiao has never heard of any heaven-mending pill. Then, does the Imperial Thunder Sect have it? Zhong Haoran seemed to be unwilling to give up his evil intentions. This Xiao doesn't know. Xiao Hua was clear that even if the Imperial Thunder Sect had the heaven-mending pill, it was impossible for him to know. Then, can Senior Xiao heal Senior Sister Xiao's meridians? Zhong Haoran felt that he was a little suffocated. Meridians. Xiao Hua seemed to have thought of something and couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Even if he passed the dragon transformation art to Zhong Xiuhan, it didn't seem to be able to repair her meridians, right? Moreover, it was impossible for him to casually pass the dragon transformation art to Zhong Xiuhan. Senior Xiao. Zhong Haoran said with a sad face, Senior Xiao, this junior begged you. How can you not have a way? How about this? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, you should bring me to see Zhong Xiuhan. This Xiao will take a look at the situation first. Perhaps there's a way. Yes, how could I forget? Zhong Haoran slapped his head and said dejectedly, this junior was completely flustered when he saw Senior Xiao. This junior was really disrespectful. Please. Obviously, Zhong Haoran had completely ignored that perhaps. By the time they arrived at the Orchid of the Valley courtyard, the sky was already bright. In the courtyard and by the lake, there were already some old people walking around. Although there were many people, most of them were very low-level cultivators. They looked like they were already in their twilight years. Everyone looked at Xiao Hua and Zhong Haoran, their listless eyes unable to stir up the slightest ripple. Xiao Hua had already scanned this place with his divine perception, so he didn't find it strange. He followed Zhong Haoran to an exquisite little house. Haoran, you're back so soon? Zhong Xiuhan obviously heard Zhong Haoran's footsteps and said happily, Martial Uncle Jing, she didn't come? He, Zhong Haoran said with a smile. I didn't even see Martial Uncle Jing, Zhong Haoran said before entering the little house. Mph, Zhong Haoran, you pig-head. I told you. That mysterious thing of yours is completely useless. Zhong Xiuhan scolded. However, just as she finished scolding, Zhong Xiuhan was stunned. Wasn't Xiao Hua following behind Zhong Haoran? That Xiao Hua whom she had met several decades ago and whose appearance hadn't changed in the slightest. Zhong Xiuhan couldn't sense Xiao Hua's cultivation, but she didn't dare to be negligent. Just as she reached out to cover her mouth, she immediately bowed and greeted, Junior Zhong Xiuhan greets Senior Xiao. Seeing Zhong Xiuhan and Zhong Haoran's deep affection, Xiao Hua felt very comfortable in his heart. He thought about how the two of them were still bickering outside Mingxi even though they were already injured. Bickering wasn't right. It was Zhong Xiuhan who was bullying Zhong Haoran. And now, Zhong Xiuhan had already become a cripple, but Zhong Haoran still didn't abandon her and tried his best to think of a way. He really lived up to the name Haoran. -8. Chapter 21:13. Suddenly, Xiao Hua remembered the oath that Zhong Haoran made to him, and then looked at Zhong Yuhan thoughtfully. Zhong Yuhan was pretty, and she looked like she was used to ordering Zhong Haoran around. Although Xiao Hua was here and she had changed to be respectful, she didn't take Zhong Haoran's carefulness seriously. I've been thinking too much. Xiao Hua laughed in his heart and helped Zhong Yuhan up. Zhong Yuhan, this Xiao was just passing by and happened to meet Zhong Haoran. This Xiao didn't know what he said. This Xiao didn't have any heaven-mending pill, and I didn't know that the Imperial Thunder Sect had such a miraculous pill. This Xiao just thought it was a coincidence. Zhong Yuhan was very disappointed, and she couldn't hide the deep sense of loss between her eyebrows. However, Xiao Hua immediately changed the topic. However, since the heavens let this Xiao pass by and meet two fellow Taoists, this Xiao might want to take a look. Perhaps the heavens have already given this Xiao a method to cure you? Senior Xiao, please be merciful. Zhong Haoran couldn't help but salute from the side. Yes, Senior Xiao, please help. Zhong Yuhan couldn't help but feel hopeful. Although Xiao Hua was a Foundation establishment cultivator, he was from the Imperial Thunder sect, which was 100 times stronger than the Zhong family, right? Xiao Hua waved his hand, turned his head and asked, Zhong Haoran, what is this place? Senior Xiao, this is the Orchid of the Valley Courtyard, a place where the disciples of my Zhong family reflect on their mistakes. Zhong Haoran smiled apologetically. At the same time, there are also some old and weak people who are recuperating here. Oh, so it's like that. Xiao Hua nodded and said, Zhong Haoran, you go out first. Wait for this Xiao to take a look at Zhong Yuhan's injuries, then we will make a plan. Yes, this junior will go out now. This junior will guard the door. Zhong Haoran didn't dare to say anything, and carefully walked out and closed the door. Xiao Hua glanced around and said, Zhong Yuhan, close your eyes as if you're cultivating. Yes, this junior understands. Zhong Yuhan obediently sat cross-legged and closed her eyes. Xiao Hua first scanned Zhong Yuhan with his divine sense, and then stretched out his left hand, 2 fingers strangely placed on Zhong Yuhan's wrists. Xiao Hua himself also sat down cross-legged. He actually used the Huangqi technique. After a while, Xiao Hua furrowed his brows and withdrew his finger. Immediately after, another strand of true origin flowed into Zhong Xiuhan's meridians. However, just as the true qi began to circulate in Zhong Xiuhan's meridians, a feeling of enlightenment, or perhaps a sense of déjà vu spontaneously arose. It was as if he had treated such damaged meridians before. Meridian nourishing pill. Xiao Hua almost groaned. A familiar pill and pill recipe appeared in his mind, and even more pill refining techniques and pill recipes gradually flashed in his mind. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly let go of his hand. He closed his eyes and carefully captured the memories that flowed like a fountain. Zhong Yuhan waited for a long time, but seeing that Xiao Hua didn't do anything, she unconsciously opened her eyes. When he saw Xiao Hua's expression, he thought that Xiao Hua was thinking carefully. Therefore, she didn't dare to make a sound and only waited patiently by the side. After about half an hour, Zhong Haoran, who was outside the hut, was somewhat impatient. After all, Xiao Hua only wanted to see what the situation was and didn't say that he could definitely cure it. Just as Zhong Haoran was worrying about his gains and losses, he heard Xiao Hua call out from inside, Zhong Haoran, come in. Zhong Haoran heard Xiao Hua's indifferent tone and felt that there was nothing special. He unconsciously became happy. He pushed open the door and quickly walked in. He bowed and said, Senior Xiao, this Xiao has already seen Zhong Xiuhan's meridians. Xiao Hua looked at the cultivator whose eyes were filled with joy and said with a smile, although the situation is very bad, this Xiao has some confidence. Really? Zhong Haoran was ecstatic when he heard this. His knees went soft and he was about to kneel in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and stopped Zhong Haoran from kneeling. He looked at Zhong Xiuhan again, however, I can't treat it right now. Why? Zhong Haoran asked anxiously. This Xiao still has some things that I haven't gathered. Xiao Hua said indifferently. What does Senior want? This junior will help you find it. Zhong Haoran patted his chest and said. Xiao Hua held his chin with his hand and looked at Zhong Haoran. He seemed to have made a decision. He patted Zhong Haoran's shoulder and said, Come with me, I will explain it to you. Yes. Zhong Haoran looked at Zhong Xiuhan and followed Xiao Hua out. However, after a moment, Zhong Haoran came back in a daze. His eyes were blank and he slightly avoided Zhong Xiuhan's gaze. Haoran, what's wrong? What did Senior Xiao say? Zhong Xiuhan said with some worry, Is Senior Xiao's request too high? No. When Zhong Haoran heard this, the worry on his face disappeared. He smiled and said, Senior Xiao's request is very simple. You don't need to think too much. Senior Xiao said that it won't take long, at most a month, to cure your meridians. Ah, really? Zhong Xiuhan was overjoyed and almost jumped up from the ground, so, I can continue to cultivate? Of course. Zhong Haoran nodded affirmatively. Thank you, Haoran. Zhong Xiuhan excitedly hugged Zhong Haoran and nestled her head on Zhong Haoran's chest. If it was before, Zhong Haoran would definitely be dizzy and might even fall on the ground in joy. But this time, Zhong Haoran's face only reddened for a moment and a trace of a bitter smile hung on his mouth. He stretched out his stiff arm and his trembling hand stroked Zhong Xiuhan's beautiful hair. Zhong Xiuhan felt Zhong Haoran's action, and how could she still scold him? She only tightened her hands and firmly hugged Zhong Haoran's waist. At this moment, Xiao Hua's divine sense swept through the small room and a trace of a smile flashed on the corner of his mouth. This smile had an indescribable meaning. Meridian Nourishing Pill. It's a pill that specializes in repairing meridians and dantian. The main ingredients are crimson pearlgrass and scarlet flame grass. Xiao Hua's smile flashed and a happy expression appeared on his face. He thought to himself, obviously, just based on the names of these two spiritual herbs, Xiaoyu continent definitely doesn't have them. However, these two kinds of spiritual herbs, as well as some supplementary spiritual herbs, are in my mind. Just now, I roughly searched through the space, and unexpectedly, there are ready-made spiritual herbs. Moreover, they are also very old. It seems that they were born from the seeds of the 100 herbs gate that won't germinate. This means that the Meridian Soothing Pill should be able to be refined successfully. However, whether or not it can completely repair Zhong Xiuhan's meridians, I don't have much confidence. Of course, if the Meridian Soothing Pill is effective, then it would be the Heaven Mending Pill that they speak of. If something happens when Xue Xue is building her foundation, then this pill will still be useful. -8. Chapter 21:14. It seems that this Meridian Nourishing Pill or Heaven Mending Pill must be refined this time. Xiao Hua made up his mind and returned to the cave. Seeing Xiao Hua return, Xue Xue naturally asked again. Xiao Hua didn't hide anything and told her the story. Xue Xue was already very surprised that Xiao Hua could refine the Heaven Mending Pill, but after thinking about it again, she realized that the Heaven Mending Pill was far inferior to Xiao Hua's sudden inspiration. Husband, I really don't know how to envy you. Xue Xue smiled bitterly. You have to know, you have just reached foundation establishment. If you were at spirit severing stage at this time, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. Although that is an ancient magical ability, there are still some relics in the cultivation sects and some mutated magical abilities. For example, some deducing money is to sprinkle a handful of money left behind from ancient times on the ground and use some special magical abilities to deduce what will happen. Husband, you don't need to do anything and can sense what is going to happen. Maybe. Xiao Hua scratched his head. He couldn't tell Xue Xue about the Buddhist sect, so he couldn't explain the sensing of the Buddha's relics. However, Xiao Hua still said, in that case, I will start refining the Heaven Mending Pill. You and I have stayed here for a long time, let's change places and go to Orchid of the Valley Courtyard. Zhong Tianyao will never think of that place. Anything is fine. Xue Xue smiled sweetly, with husband's arrangement, anywhere is fine. Then, Xue Xue said apologetically, husband, actually, I'm afraid I'm afraid I've delayed your cultivation. Huh? What do you mean by that? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned and asked curiously. Xue Xue said, husband is now at the middle stage of foundation establishment, so you should cultivate in seclusion. Moreover, husband can refine pills by himself, so you don't need to rely on the sect's supply. Taking pills while improving your cultivation, the late stage of foundation establishment is just around the corner. And you, for me, ran so far and involved so many trivial matters. How can you improve your cultivation? He, Xiao Hua smiled and reached out to hold Xue Xue's soft hand, and said warmly, for men, some things can't be done, and some things must be done. Accompanying my wife to cultivate is what I must do as a husband. As for cultivation, can't you see that your husband has already refined the brilliant flower pill? Are you taking it every day and cultivating every day? When Xue Xue heard this, her heart was as sweet as honey. She clenched her fists and said, I always feel like I'm a burden to my husband. Otherwise, my husband would be able to go further. However, there were times when she thought, if cultivation was like this, so what if I didn't build my foundation? If we walk like this for the rest of our lives and look at the sea for the rest of our lives, wouldn't it be more beautiful? It's better not to build a foundation. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He knew that Xue Xue seemed to be very afraid of foundation establishment. She was afraid that she would lose her life if she didn't pass, so she didn't dare to enter foundation establishment. Thus, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Husband refined this heaven-mending pill for wife's sake. If wife, husband is only saying in case something happens to wife, this heaven-mending pill can also be useful." Xue Xue's eyes flashed with a trace of gloom, but she still smiled and said, "Husband, aren't you cursing me? Forget it, let's not talk about it. Let's leave." Okay, as Xiao Hua spoke, he put away the rabbit spell formation and brought Xue Xue to the mountain peak where Zhong Haoren made his wish. He released the puppets and opened 2 caves on the stone wall. Then, he set up the rabbit spell formation and protected these 2 caves. Only then did he start refining the meridian nourishing pill in one of the caves. The technique used to refine the meridian nourishing pill was completely different from the dawn rain continent. All kinds of spells were used, and they all faintly stirred up changes in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. There were even some sounds of wind and thunder. This made Xiao Hua quite puzzled, because in his memory, there weren't so many strange phenomena. However, in any case, Xiao Hua started refining the meridian nourishing pill. His memories regarding alchemy also increased, and his alchemy technique also neared perfection. At the same time when Xiao Hua was refining the pill, Zhong Yejing was flying out of Zhongling Mountain Villa with a tall and sturdy cultivator. That cultivator's face was unruly, and his slender eyes were very disdainful. From time to time, he would reveal an impatient expression. Brother Dong, Zhong Yejing saw this situation, and there was a trace of worry on her face. She said in a low voice, "This matter concerns the rise and fall of my Zhong family. It's very important. You have to listen to sister's arrangement." Okay, that cultivator was Zhong Yedong. With an impatient expression, he flicked his sleeve and said, "You've said this countless times since we left the villa. I naturally know what to do." Yes. Zhong Yejing was also helpless. At this time, the Zhongling Mountain Villa was in a state of unrest. Everyone else was on guard, afraid that Xiao Hua would suddenly kill his way into the villa. No one dared to leave without permission. Only she and Zhong Yedong were temporarily unable to help, so they were sent out by Zhong Tianyao. Their purpose was very simple, and that was to leave Zhongling Mountain Villa to look for help. There were many cultivation families in the south of Meng country, but there weren't many families with profound cultivation who had reached the Golden Core realm. And the closest families to the center of Yun City were the Fei family of Ji City and the Qin family of Fan City. These 2 families' patriarchs, Fei Xiqing and Qin Kai, were already in the early Golden Core realm, which was the same as Zhong Tianyao. Zhong Tianyao wanted to capture Xiao Hua, or even kill him, but he couldn't do it alone. Therefore, he set his sights on the 2 nearby cultivation families. After flying for several hours, a hot aura began to appear in front of them. A red mountain range appeared in front of them. Zhong Yejing knew that this was the Red Crane Mountain where the Fei family of Ji City was located. "Brother Dong," Zhong Yejing said in a low voice, but before she could finish, Zhong Yedong sneered, "Are you the brother or am I the brother? Do I need you to remind me again and again? After entering Red Crane Mountain, I'll just treat myself as a mute, okay? That's not necessary." Zhong Yejing smiled apologetically and said, "Brother Dong, just don't get angry." "How can I not get angry? Your words made me angry before I even entered the mountain," Zhong Yedong said angrily. "Seniors, where did you come from? Did you come to pay a visit to my Fei family?" While they were talking, several aura refining disciples on duty flew over and asked with a bow, "Damn it, if I didn't come to pay a visit to your Fei family, why did I come to this Red Crane Mountain?" Zhong Yedong's words made Zhong Yejing feel helpless. "Seniors, where did you come from? Why did you come to my Fei family?" Fortunately, Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong were foundation building cultivators, so how could the aura refining disciples dare to be disrespectful? They didn't dare to take Zhong Yedong's words seriously and still asked respectfully, We're disciples of Yun City's Zhong family. We came to Red Crane Mountain this time because we have an important matter to discuss with your family's patriarch. Please inform him. Zhong Yejing knew she had a request, so she didn't dare to be negligent. She stepped forward and said in a warm voice, "This." The disciple on duty was a little embarrassed. He smiled apologetically and said, "It's not that Junior doesn't want to inform seniors. If it was someone else, it would have been fine, but Patriarch has been discussing tool refining techniques with Fan City's Qin family's patriarch these past few days. He's already told us not to meet ordinary people." Zhong Yejing understood that the so-called ordinary people must be cultivators below the Golden Core realm. However, Zhong Yedong sneered and said, "What do you mean ordinary people? I've traveled a long way just to pay a visit to Old Master Fei, so how did I become an ordinary person? If I had nothing to do, who would come here? It's so hot here, how can it be more comfortable than my Zhongling mountain villa? He, senior, please turn back." The disciples on duty didn't seem to give Zhong Yedong any face and refused politely with a smile. Zhong Yedong waved his hand and was about to use a confinement technique. Zhong Yejing panicked and quickly stood in front of Zhong Yedong. She really didn't want to come out with Zhong Yedong, but for their safety, Zhong Tianyao made this arrangement. However, she didn't expect him to attack an aura-refining disciple the moment he saw the Fei family's disciple. How was this the attitude of someone who came to ask for help? "Brother Dong." Zhong Yejing clapped her hand and took out an arrow token. She said angrily, "Do you recognize my Zhong family's patriarch token?" Zhong Yedong's face tightened, and he hurriedly stopped and respectfully saluted the arrow token. Zhong Yedong greets patriarch. "Brother Dong, fortunately, you know that seeing the patriarch token is the same as seeing the patriarch." Zhong Yejing snorted and no longer paid attention to him. She turned to the disciple on duty and said, "This is my Zhong family's patriarch token. My Zhong family has indeed encountered a crisis. If the patriarch wasn't in the mountain villa, he would have come long ago. Please take the patriarch token and report to him." So it's like that. The disciple on duty obviously knew the importance of the patriarch token. He stretched out his hand and took the arrow token. He smiled apologetically and said, "In that case, please wait for a moment. This junior will go and report to him." "Thank you." Zhong Yejing nodded. After the disciple flew away, the other disciples smiled apologetically and said, "Seniors, please follow us. Please wait at the mountain gate." Fei family's Mount Feihe had earth fire. Below the mountain range, crimson flames surged. It was similar to the Flame Forest Mountains. Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong followed the disciples to the mountainside. A huge rock was emitting a faint heat. At this temperature, there was no green vegetation. Similarly, brown thorns covered the entire Mount Feihe. Not long after, two early-stage foundation building cultivators flew over together with the Zhong family's patriarch token in their hands. Seeing the two cultivators with the same cultivation level as her, Zhong Yejing was delighted. She knew that Fei Xiqing had agreed to meet them, so she sent the two cultivators to welcome them. "Fellow Taoists Zhong, please." The two cultivators flew over and politely handed the Zhong family's patriarch token back to Zhong Yejing. They smiled and said, "I am Fei Ming, and this is my junior brother, Fei Yulian. The two of us are here to welcome the two fellow Taoists under the orders of the patriarch." "Well said, well said." Zhong Yedong finally smiled. Zhong Yejing took the token and returned the greeting, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Then, Zhong Yejing and Zhong Yedong followed the two Fei family disciples into Mount Feihe and arrived at the Fei family's guest hall. The Fei clan was different from the Zhong clan. They didn't build their foundation in the manner. Instead, they used Mount Feihe as their base. They opened up a cave on Mount Feihe and built their pavilions along the mountain. This guest hall was located in a rather large cave. -8. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,